So let's get started. So, Moohoodles has been streaming for almost 11 years on Twitch. That is literally the most impressive thing I've ever heard. I'm barely at 5. It's
a long time.
I didn't even know Twitch existed, I think 11 years ago. Like, it's amazing. Covering current news in outer space and astrobiology. Along with doing science communication, she also does a variety gaming from retro to new releases and brings the educational content into the games she plays. Her degree is in computer science, so she also talks about programming, specifically the overlap in computer science and astronomy, and of course, she also educates about sharks and conservation, emphasizing how we need to take care of our planet Earth. Moo aims to increase our scientific literacy, uplift women in STEM, and nerd out while making people laugh, even if that's snort laughing at her own jokes. Welcome, Moohoodles. I'm so glad you are here and we could do this because
thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
This has been a bucket list people to get on to the chat and everything, and I'm just like so excited that you're finally
thank
here.
You.
I know, FICO 11. It's amazing, absolutely, and she's partner. She's great. She's awesome. Everyone should check her out. When do you normally stream? Do you have a normal stream schedule? Because God love it, I barely do.
A schedule every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, which is like 9 p.m. East Coast time.
Yeah. Which is literally great, guys, because I'm mostly Tuesday, Thursday, so that means that you can hit up both of us in one fellow week, which is amazing. Yay. So, I'm going to start off with one of our questions. We're kind of just going to go back and forth with questions because I think archaeology and astrobiology has a very interesting Venn diagram, which we will get to. But I want to hear more about it. I was telling Moohoodles when we were planning this, both my grandfather and my father worked for NASA for a while, and I have always been interested in space and what my dad taught me. We always have had like really fancy pictures of like the shuttles and stuff around my house that I've inherited from my grandfather. So space has always been something that's very interested to me. And I want to know, how did you get interested in space, Moohoodles?
Good question. I feel like there's like so many different things that got me interested in space. I think just looking up at the sky as a kid was a big one because space always just looks so cool, and it's like, ooh, what is that? What's out there? I think, you know, I've always been curious about if there is life out there and what is it like, and you know, where is it? And as I got older and saw the Hubble Space Telescope images release, I would just spend nights like staring at those and deep diving into them and like zooming into, you know, the Hubble Deep Field and stuff, and looking at the beautiful nebulas. But the Hubble Deep Field and all of the galaxies really blew my mind, which is kind of similar to my background.
I was going to ask if that was what your background. I was going to ask that. That was.
This is similar, but it's taken with a James Webb Space Telescope. But yeah, there's like 45,000 galaxies in my background image, and it's so cool.
Absolutely insane.
So yeah, I think I don't know. It wasn't anything specific. It wasn't like a specific person. It was just kind of me being like, oh, space is cool, and all of this stuff's awesome. But Hubble Space Telescope definitely like gave me a bigger push into it, I think.
I love that. That's amazing. And then was it a easy jump to do Sci-Comm? Because I think that is something that, at least in my field, like in Sci-Comm, at least in archaeology, although like archaeology is a science, so it technically fits in there, but like the more proper term is like public archaeology, at least what we use in our field, and it's up and coming. It's not really been a huge priority up until pretty recently. And so like, how did you kind of jump from I want to learn about space and now I want to share it with other people?
Ooh. So I guess I've always liked helping people learn about things, and I've always just really wanted to talk about all of my hyper-focus interests. Like my whole life through school, I always wrote papers on like sharks and help people learn about like shark conservation and that they're important animals. And I feel like kind of a natural step was to share my love about space with people. I feel like back in the day, and this is going to sound kind of weird if people don't remember this, but back in the day, there wasn't really, as far as I knew, there wasn't any or many YouTube channels kind of doing science communication. And Twitch was only gaming like a decade ago. And so I figured, okay, I'll do like a YouTube series, but my goal is to be like a TV host and be able to like do this kind of like Bill Nye style, right?
Yeah.
So I figured I would, you know, work towards that goal. And there was like a Reddit AMA with Bill Nye, and I kind of asked how to be like a better science educator. I didn't even say science communication because I feel like that wasn't even like a thing. But I was like, how do I like educate people better and stuff? And I mentioned that I, you know, wanted to have a TV show one day, and I started up my YouTube channel that day because I got a lot of comments from people being really interested, which was super cool.
That's amazing.
And it was really surreal. But yeah, I think just I feel like it was just a natural step. Like I was like, that's something I want to do. Like I'm just really passionate about this. So I was happy that I was able to, you know, play video games back in the day on Twitch, but just like naturally the conversation would be like, well, let's talk about Mars and space and all of these things that I want to talk about anyways. Yeah, and then, you know, later on they made the science and tech category, and obviously science communication is a big thing here on Twitch and all over the place, on TikTok, YouTube. There's so many different wonderful people sharing their knowledge and their expertise. So it's super rad.
That's amazing. Yeah, it feels like I feel like in a lot of fields there still is that separation between academia and the public, but that we are slowly but surely kind of breaking down those barriers. But truly, like, public archaeology, you're right, like 10 years ago was not really a thing. Like it was especially because archaeology and like the museum community are weirdly separate. They shouldn't really be, but a lot of times they are, and they are the difference between a museum educator or a museum curator and an archaeologist are usually quite wide. Like you would sometimes attribute like a museum person to be like an armchair archaeologist, somebody who's not actually going out into the field, just the researcher, the historian, and kind of doing something like that. But I really didn't think that I would ever, well, in certain ways, I don't think I ever thought that I would do streaming and make videos and stuff. When I look back, I was obviously of the age of like the YouTube like community, and I remember making videos thinking, oh, I'm talking to the camera like I would post it on YouTube, even though I was way too young to be doing so. But I took a class called Public Archaeology when I studied abroad at an Institute of Archaeology, and I was like, oh, wait a second, like this is actually a field, this is a real thing that people do. Because it just wasn't something, it's not that it's widely accepted in America, but like, I think there are literally maybe 2 schools in America that offer a public archaeology degree or even a public archaeology class. I find it is much more common in, I don't know why, the British do everything with archaeology better than the United States. They have so much more access, and they have so much more like, I don't know, the public seems so much more willing to help and do things in that area. And in Egypt, in America, it's just struggling. Silver, your question, what is public archaeology? It is technically a science communicator. That is like, I would say that those titles are exactly the same. It's just that archaeology is not always seen as a science. It's a social science. It's kind of on this separate scale than like astronomy and biology and chemistry and stuff like that. But public archaeology is usually like, if say a historic house is doing an excavation, like the archaeologist will be excavating and the public archaeologist will be standing to the side and will just communicate that to any guest that is walking by. But not every excavation is going to hire somebody like that. Almost probably nobody would actually hire somebody like that. And it's just, I don't think it's really seen as a field yet, which is so like frustrating. And I'm very lucky that like the job that I do right like now, that is not Egyptology, that's on the total side of it, as a museum educator, technically the the museum I work in is an archaeology museum, and the museum educator is a public educator, and we are doing that. We are doing lessons. We are teaching archaeology like actively every single day, either through exhibits or through school programs or anything like that. So it's the people facing side of it, which for a field that often doesn't have a people siding face to it, which I bet a lot of other sciences can relate to when you're like stuck in a lab or stuck in an observatory or something that doesn't have any sort of public facing aspect, which is hard to kind of deal with.
That is so interesting. Sorry, part of me is like also troubleshooting like little things.
Oh yes. no problem at all.
I know your video is like mega laggy on my side, so apologies anyone tuning into my stream. I think Melissa's stream looks better to tune into, just a heads up. But feel free to leave a tab open on both.
It's probably because my lovely new computer still can't take all of the shit that I do, as everyone will yell at me that I leave all my tabs open and stuff like that.
It's all good. I think my bot is also posting all of my commands in our share chat as well, so I can turn that off if you want.
I do not care.
I never used share chat, but
that's totally fine.
Okay.
But yeah,
that's awesome though.
Keep
sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, keep going.
I was gonna say I love that you're able to like educate people and bring this like all of your knowledge and all of the stuff that you do like, you know, to the general public. It's so cool. It is so cool.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. I didn't realize until really recently that Twitch only did video games. Like, and I heard from somebody, who was that? It was the Nerdy Nummies girl, the Rosanna Pansino. She wanted to do Twitch streaming like way back in the day when she was really famous on YouTube, and they told her no because she does baking. She does baking and like cooking. And they told her no, and they were like, it's only for video games. And then like later they came in and they were like, oh yeah, you can come in and have like a cooking show and stuff. And she told her because of that she was totally done with it. And before that I didn't realize that it was only video games, because I just started on Twitch. I literally started on Twitch because I got Assassin's Creed Origins and I didn't want to play it by myself. I wanted to play it with people, and so it's not a multiplayer game, and so I just wanted to play it so that people could watch, and I thought people would think it would be interesting, and it obviously worked because here we are 5 years later. But I think that's the best way that I have found is like I find these video games that there are plenty of really bad video games about archaeology and history, and then good video games that take like much longer. And how many different space ones are there? I feel like there are a wide range, but I feel like a lot of them also would kind of take the step towards aliens and like not so accurate things.
Yeah, a lot of them take the you know, more of like the creative route and going the more sci-fi route, because you know we don't have spaceships, we're not flying around in space, but there's not many space games. I can't even think of a space game really without a spaceship where you're flying around in space. So they definitely have that like creative liberty, I feel like, with the games to be more like science fiction-y, but still kind of have some roots in like realistic things if they want. But yeah, I could imagine how weird it would be playing some like archaeology games where they're like trying to get it right and they're just so wrong.
Oh my god. There are only two that have been kind of like very accurate when it comes to just base archaeology. Like not Egypt. There's plenty of others of Egypt and stuff. There's a game called Archaeology X. It is the worst game ever because it just does not work. Like on the very basis of it's just somebody could not code it correctly because I got stuck in a mountain. But like it just, you can dig and dig and dig and you can't find anything. It just doesn't exist. And I'm just like, I don't understand. And then the other game, which I love but also hate, is called C14 Dating, and it's a dating sim where you are...
Oh my god, someone made a dating sim? I was talking about that on my stream. I love that. Sorry.
It is a very well produced game. I love it, I hate it because I've never won it. We've done it 2 Valentine's Days in a row, and I've never won a man or a woman. I've never won anyone, and it makes me very sad. And it is the most accurate archaeology game that it is boring in some parts. I think you are an American student, and you go to Belgium to excavate a Neanderthal cave, and it teaches you about archaeology. Like, the very beginning part is so boring because it goes through everything very accurately, and I'm just like skipping. I'm like, I don't need to know this. I know all these things. And then, but the whole thing is that every time I've played it, you have to apparently follow everything to a T, or else you will not end up with anybody at the end, because I've ended up lonely and sad both times I've played. I don't know how to fix it. But I do recommend it because it does teach you a lot about archaeology. It teaches you a lot about, like, it teaches you the differences between Neanderthal and Neanderthal. Like, it teaches you a lot. It's just a little bit stupid hard for no reason.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I really
not
like
cool
it.
That it's really, really hard, but I love that it's educational.
No, I will take an accurate game over anything. Absolutely. It's just annoying to me because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
I saw Fico in chat mention No Man's Sky. I also really love that game.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard of that one. There's so many games that I've heard of, and so many of them I want to play, but then I'm like, I almost only play video games while I'm streaming. I barely play video games outside of it, and so it's like I stick with my theme very tightly, and so I'm like, well, I guess I'm not gonna play it if it's not about his. And I do stretch it. We did play a game that was like sort of Tower of Babel. We've played a couple like language games and stuff, but we're pretty much on the Assassin's Creed kick, and we're slowly but surely going through all of those games. I just want to go back and play Origins, but no one will let me. Everyone wants me to play all the original Assassin's Creed games, and so we'll eventually get back to Origins, which is my favorite by far. Nothing can really beat it and such. Now,
that game seems so good.
It's so good. It's so good, and it, like, because I played it first, it completely, like, it completely changed me and how all the other games, and I judge all of them on that, which is stupid because it's like one of the most recent games and it has like good gameplay and good story and things like that, but it will always be the best one in my mind. Now, because fair. What I want to get a good definition from you, because I mentioned this to one of my friends yesterday and they did not know, like, what is astrobiology and how is that different from astronomy?
So astrobiology is the study of the origin, evolution, and distribution of life in the universe. So it's a really multidisciplinary field combining a lot of different fields like chemistry, geology, biology, planetary science, so many things. And it's kind of looking at how did life originate on Earth? What weird environments can life exist on, like in Earth, like, you know, with extremophiles that can handle, you know, like really weird temperatures or high alkalinity or whatever environments. And also seeing if there's other environments outside of Earth that are similar to that, or maybe areas that life could exist in, like Saturn's moon Enceladus or Jupiter's moon Europa. They both have an icy crust with liquid water oceans. Enceladus pretty much has everything needed to harbor life, which is really cool.
Very cool.
And it's also looking out there into, you know, different exoplanets, which are just planets that orbit any star that's not the sun. And, you know, trying to look at the atmospheres of those or learning more to see if it's an Earth-like planet. You know, is it a rocky planet? Could it have water on the surface? And all of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. This makes so much more sense. I was like, okay, like, obviously I get it, astro and biology, but I that makes way more sense that it is about the origins of a lot of things, and then where else. It's an interesting thing where it's like you're both looking at the past, but you're also looking kind of at the future and looking at the other planets that could potentially be the same. I love that. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. It's definitely like a bit of a hard search, needle in a haystack kind of thing. But the more we learn about Earth and life on Earth and everything, and the more we look out there and get awesome telescopes up in space checking things out, obviously it helps a lot. I guess part of that too is looking for, you know, like signs of radio waves or any communications or anything like that as well. Obviously that has not been successful so far, but it's something that they're doing and something they should be doing. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. So, I kind of want to, I know everyone wants to talk about conspiracy theories, but I kind of want to talk first about a little bit of the research I've done on how the ancient Egyptians saw space and the stars and stuff, and we'll just kind of discuss. I just have a couple notes, and then I know that there was one big question that Moohoodles asked me, and oh boy, the information I found it blew my mind when I looked it up and saw. I'm like, okay, we're gonna debunk this, but we'll go into a little bit.
I'm so excited.
And then we'll go into more of the Venn diagram of archaeology and astrobiology and talk a little bit about that. So I first wanted to kind of say, like, I don't think the Egyptians understood obviously fully what space was, but they like obviously acknowledged the stars. They followed the stars very well, but we don't really have any sort of idea of coming from them that like there is other things out there, that it is not just a blank like blanket over the world. I don't really think they had any sort of concept of that. But we know that Egyptian astronomy started very, very early, in early pre-dynastic times, and we actually have a stone circle that's at a place called Nabta Playa that was possibly made via astronomical alignments, and that's in and around the 5000 BCE era, which is very early for ancient Egypt, before any major structures are made. And so knowing that they are following the stars was definitely something, and a lot of ancient cultures did this as well. And then, if anybody did not know, the ancient Egyptians had a 365-day calendar, and it was created via the stars. Granted, did they also have a whole creation myth theory that there are 360 days and then there are 5 extra days that were children of a goddess? Yes, they did have that. So everything in this, all of this like quote unquote science that they are sort of developing and talking about is very, very much ingrained into their religion and their religious beliefs. So and God forbid we always say science and religion are separate now, but are they really? Who knows? But back in ancient Egypt, they were one and the same. They were all like kind of combined. And the really big thing that the Egyptians used the stars for was to observe when the annual flood would start, because the flood was necessary for, I think it's very cool to talk about the flood, because everyone's like, nowadays, like, we fear natural disasters and we fear the destruction that natural disasters came from. But literally, if the ancient Egyptians didn't get the flood, they would not have been able to survive in Egypt. Like, it's that plain and simple. They needed the flood to bring in all of the fertile soil from down south all the way up to the delta so that they could grow their crops. So they had to be kind of adaptive to it, and they would use the rising of the star Sirius as when the beginning of the inundation would begin. And Sirius is both like a star, but it also is a god called Sopdet, which is just Sirius in ancient Egyptian. And it's like, it's more just like a personification of the star. It's not really its own goddess. It doesn't really do much. It's just the goddess of the star, and then the goddess also of the flood as well. Oh yeah. Oh yes, Mage on Earth. They got floods every year on the dot. They had only 3 months or 3 seasons, and one of the seasons is inundation, and the entire Nile riverbed would flood. And nowadays it does not do that because of, unfortunately, the modern inclination of not being adaptive and us like fearing natural disasters. And so there are now, they've included like 5 or 6 dams, including the Aswan High Dam, which now stops the flood pretty much. And now they use more canals to get the water out to all the different fields, but you needed it to flood the entire area, bring in the dark soil and all of the sediment, and then to make sure their crops would grow. So, but yeah, the flood was very, very important. And that is why, for a random other fun fact, the ancient Egyptians are the only ancient culture that do not have a legend of a great flood, because they weren't scared of floods. So why would they need an ancient story of a flood killing everyone and doing everything? So they weren't scared of it. They knew how to adapt to it.
That's so cool.
I know, it's flood myths are one of my weird specialties, because that I've learned a lot about different flood myths all over the world. But it's like, ancient Egyptians don't need one. They're not scared. They know how to deal with it. It's fine.
Awesome. And I love that you have that knowledge. I'm not surprised, but I love that you know about that. That's so cool.
It is my only foray into archaeological theory, because I hate theory like so much. There is a theory essentially called independent invention versus diffusionism. And that it's that independent invention is that 2 cultures that have no attachment, have no communication between each other, can independently invent the exact same thing. I.e., the Mayans built pyramids and the Egyptians built pyramids, and they've never had any contact. But then there is diffusionism, which is the groups that are more close together, where somebody, i.e. the Mesopotamians, they come up with a flood myth, and then the people who are then later writing the Bible, they're like, hey, I like that myth. I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to change a couple things. And it just diffuses itself. Excuse me while the TikTok live disconnects and makes that crazy sound that I don't know how to stop. But yeah, so it's this independent invention versus diffusionism. And so it's the flood myth diffused outside of Mesopotamia, which is why multiple cultures in that area have a flood myth. But it technically probably diffused to Egypt, but they did not continue this myth. They did not feel it necessary because they're not scared of a flood. They're used to the floods every single year. If it doesn't happen, they die. They're in a desert. So it's my one little tidbit of theory that I actually know and understand.
That's so interesting. That's so cool.
It's very interesting. Now, this is my favorite part about how the Egyptians saw space. They saw space as a giant woman who is stretching her body over the entire land. And this goddess is named Nut. It's spelled like nut. It's pronounced like Newt. So please do not call her Nut. If anybody's on my chat and you see a little woman that is covered in blue and with little stars, that is Nut. And I also found people might recognize her if you've ever, this is a very weird reference, if you've ever watched the filmed version of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, the musical with Donny Osmond, there is a part in the musical where there these women wearing these like skin tight suits with blue suits with stars all over their body, and they are literally representing Newt. And it's one of those really random things that I've noticed in like that actually people are paying attention to ancient Egyptian culture. And she's like one of the first goddesses originally, and she is married to Geb, who is the earth, and he like lies down on his side, and Newt kind of stands over him with her hands on one side, her body across, and then her feet sitting down, and she's just covered in stars. And she's so interesting because she's technically the sky, like she is the sky goddess. They don't have a word for space. It's just she is the sky, and they don't really even have an explanation for like why you can't see the stars in the day. Like they don't really bother with that, kind of. It's just Newt is always there, and it always, even on the top of a coffin lid, they'll actually put a depiction of Newt, so that when you are essentially deceased and you're lying in your coffin, you're always looking up at the sky. And it also means that she essentially she gives birth to the sun every day, and then it goes along the side, and then she swallows it, and it's just an ever circle in that way. And then another thing that I didn't know was that the pyramid texts, which is our oldest text, coming not from the pyramids of Giza, but from the later pyramids in the Old Kingdom, they describe when a king dies, he gets risen up into the sky and becomes a star. This was something I had never heard of before doing this research, and I was like, oh, that's a new one for me. And it definitely is implying only the king would do that, which makes sense to me. But it definitely connects with like so many other legends of like people becoming stars. Like, I mean, that's in like so many movies and so many things like that I think of. You become a star in the sky. Like Princess and the Frog does that. There's what's the movie I'm thinking? Stardust does that. They become stars in the sky. So I had never read that before, and I did not know that was part of the pyramid text.
That's so cool. I wonder how many other like ancient cultures had a similar viewpoint on that.
I wonder that too.
I love it.
Because that's like, in Dragonheart, yeah, I feel like it's just something that is, I've always heard of, and I always wondered like who did that first, but I had no idea that was an actual like ancient concept, and I don't doubt that other cultures would think that too. Cool. The other thing, so beyond all of that information, astronomy in Egypt is not that popular until the Greeks and Romans settle in Egypt. They do have a beautiful motif. Almost every single tomb in the New Kingdom, the entirety of the ceiling is blue and covered with stars. I ironically call them starfish stars because they just look like starfish. They're very long and pointy, and so I call them starfish stars. And that's almost the extent of kind of where they go. In the 9th dynasty, so that's in the Middle Kingdom, after most of the pyramids are built, they do have these things called star charts, and they're found in coffin lids, and they feature pictures of ancient Egyptian deities, constellations, and then something called a decan, which I have been trying to understand for the past couple days. It is a very interesting concept where there are 36 groups of stars, essentially constellations, that then divide the 360-degree ecliptic into 36 parts. And that essentially means that every decan appears about every 10 days, like on the horizon. And this is a purely Egyptian concept, and I need to look into it more. But I couldn't really figure out why they needed to do it, honestly. I was like, they aren't really matching the constellations by like grouping. It's almost just like by every 10 degrees of the ecliptic, which I thought was very weird. And just, I don't know. I gotta look into it more because it was confusing the hell out of me. There was a lot of astronomy terms that I was not getting.
We can like do a little off-stream collab and check this out and do a deep dive.
I gotta do a deep dive because it didn't, I was surprised how it wasn't like how other ancient cultures saw the constellations, where they are grouping certain constellations and they are saying they look like something. Like that concept does not seem to come from the ancient Egyptians. That seems to be coming from, technically the zodiac comes from the Mesopotamians, but then the Greeks and Romans really take that and run with it. And so it's like, it obviously is like, it's just not how the Egyptians saw the sky. It's just like one of those interesting things. Now, then the Greeks and Romans come in. And again, like they are bringing a ton of their ideals into it. So it's very hard to discern what was originally Egyptian and what was originally Greek and Roman. And when it comes to a lot of this astronomy stuff, it seems like the vast majority is Greek and Roman stuff. But they do combine it a lot, which is very, very interesting. It's not like in other ancient cultures or even modern cultures where they take over a country and they make that entire country go along with all of their ideals. it's really, they are like, we'll just mix and match all these different constellations, all these different gods. Like we'll just use some, and you have some and I have some others. Sorry about that again. And there's also even some Babylonian astronomy along with this. And if anybody wants to know more about this, I do have a guest lecture with my friend Alexandria on my YouTube. She studies specifically the city of Alexandria during the Greco-Roman age, which was this huge like scientific hub. And she talks about astrolabes and like all of these really cool sciencey stuff, and some of the different scholars that were living in Alexandria at that time. And that's on my YouTube. But Alexandria was this huge hub. You have obviously the Library of Alexandria. You have these huge scientific and philosophers. And we do know that a Greek astronomer named, we're going to say if I can say this correctly, Eratosthenes, we're gonna go with that. He was able to calculate the size of the Earth, providing an estimate for its circumference, and that was during Greco-Roman Egypt in Alexandria. And there's a couple different people that are starting to really get into the first real, I hate to say real science, but like the things that we still use today, is kind of starting in this very, very last period of ancient Egypt.
That's so cool.
I know, it is really cool, and I kind of wish the Egyptians were contributing more to it, but it really seems that it was a lot of the Greco-Romans. But it always confused me when I would see the zodiac and the constellations that we know in Egyptian temples, and I was always like, but they didn't think like that. And then I realized it is this very weird combination. There's an absolutely beautiful temple of Dendera, which is built in the Greco-Roman time, but it is built entirely in an Egyptian style. To be honest, if you didn't know it was Greco-Roman, you would literally never know, because it features Cleopatra the Seventh and her father in a full Egyptian form. Really, you would not even kind of know the difference, that it's not technically a full Egyptian temple. And in the main room, the entire ceiling is covered in essentially these little processions of personifications of all of these different constellations, as like people or as animals, kind of just like walking across the sky, or sailing on boats as well. Sailing on boats was another really big thing. And many of these are the modern constellations, like those of the zodiac. And then in addition, you also have the Dendera ceiling, which is from the second floor of this temple. And it is the only part that has been removed, and it's now in the Louvre, and it's one of the big items that Egypt wants back. They have a replica in there. But that provides a big circular image of the sky. And it's beautiful. It's so detailed. The entire thing on the edges are held up by different humans. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the sky was held up by Shu, who is a god of air. So the air is literally holding up his mother, Nut, while he's standing on his father, Geb, who is the earth. And in this case, the entire circle is pinpointed on the North Pole star. But the interesting thing is, Ursa Minor is depicted not as a bear, but as a jackal, because ancient Egyptians don't have bears. There's probably, I can think of 2 depictions of a bear that are in existence in ancient Egypt, because they do not occur naturally in Egypt. And so in this case, they use a jackal for Ursa Minor. Any questions about that,
so
Mahoodles?
cool.
Because I just dumped you on so much information.
I don't think I have any questions immediately. I don't know if anyone in chat does.
Yes.
No, that's super cool to listen to. Thank you for educating us all about that. I love that they use the jackal as well. Like, it totally makes
really
sense.
Cool. No, it is cool, because a lot of them are the Greco-Romans. Like there is Capricorn, there is Libra, there are Aries, there are all of those constellations and stuff. But then having something that is, well, we're just gonna do a jackal, and I'm like, oh, okay, Let's get some Egyptian in there. I love that. Vev, I see your question. Pre-dynastic Egyptian cosmology, almost nothing. Like literally almost nothing. As I mentioned before, like almost everything we know about like actually how they saw the constellations and wrote all these things down, like almost all of that comes from Greco-Roman Egypt. Recently, like literally within the past year, an observatory has been found in ancient Egypt, or at least what they've interpreted as an observatory, but I don't know, no texts are coming out of it, like not that I've seen lately. So like a lot of it is just unclear, and especially in pre-dynastic where we have nothing written down. So not really much. And then Moohoodles, you have a question from FICO. Has anything come to be discovered in the astrobiology field that was presented in Egypt? Whoa, FICO. Okay, long question. Has anything been presented in Egyptian discoveries made by archaeologists about astrobiology? Like a combination of the two. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we'll be getting to a little bit later in the stream, and I think we both kind of have the answer to that.
Just
being a simple no.
No.
But yeah, unless I'm totally missing something, but no. Yeah, it was not aliens.
Yeah, no, not aliens. Yes, we will definitely come up.
Yeah,
we'll definitely talk about that a little bit. Sorry, I'm looking at my TikTok chat.
To be clear as well, astrobiology is definitely more of a recent field. Like it started within the last, millennium, kind of maybe more so. I mean, I guess there's people ahead of time, maybe like in the 50s and stuff, with like, Frank Drake and everything, and Fermi, and you've heard of Drake's equation, Fermi paradox, blah blah blah. But I feel like it was like in the 70s when it really took off, and it's more recently that we've made strides in astrobiology and have been like, yeah, there's places like we just learned of the first exoplanet. The first planet orbiting another star was just found in 1992.
Wow.
So it's been like 30 years of being like, there's other places out there, like other galaxies in the Hubble Deep Field. Like, I mean, obviously we know other galaxies, but that many with the Hubble Deep Field. And yeah, it's definitely been a lot of awesome information in astronomy and everything overall, but in astrobiology, it's a very, very new field. Yeah, most of the contributions have been, in the past 100 years, if not the past like 30 or 40 years.
Even more recent. Yeah. And again, we are going to talk about that Venn diagram of all the lovely things that we have coming up. But the one thing that Moohoodles asked me to do some research on that I realized that I had never
I'm so excited.
I had never really looked into it, and I had just kind of assumed it was true. And I might talk about this I'm no matter what, I'm going to talk about this again in next week's stream, in which I am debunking these like popular myths in Egyptology, because this is absolutely one of them. So I might be able to go into more detail next week, but we'll be able to get everything. So Moohoodles asked me if the pyramids of Giza do actually align with the 3 stars in Orion's belt, or at least aligned with how no, we're not talking about Stargate. Although I can talk about Stargate later, because I have opinions on that. But if the pyramids of Giza lined up with the stars in Orion when they were originally built, and do you have a slight explanation on like how much the stars have? I know it's not the stars have changing, but like how that works, like that they aren't the same in the same place, or is it us in the same place? Like, is
That's
that
a good question?
Yeah. I was looking
I don't
into
know if
it.
I have fully like an exact answer. I mean, I know like obviously the sky has changed over time. Like we're moving through space. Like
yes.
Our sun, our whole solar system is moving through space. Everything's moving all around. So yeah, especially with like, thousands of years, things are going to be in different spots, but astronomers are able to kind of know to backtrace it. What's like the correct word to kind of like go back and see what it looked like back in time, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's. I was trying to
I
figure
don't
out
know if
if
that was a
it's
good
like,
explanation, but
no, it is. It's just like I was trying to figure out. It's like some people might say the stars have moved, but I'm like, isn't it that we have moved and the stars are moving? Like I was like, aren't we? We're all moving. We're all moving, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it's all of those things, and so I see in my TikTok chat.
More
could
so
it
we
just be a
moved, but
coincidence?
yeah.
Could it just be a coincidence? Yes, it always can be a coincidence. But here we're going to go into a little deep dive of who came up with this theory and why this theory is completely bupkis. And I also will just do a preface. I do not use theory the way that the word theory in how actual scientific theory is, because that is not how theory is more colloquial known in my field. A theory is a hypothesis. So if I'm saying theory, it is not proven. Just, I've been called out on this now because I did a pseudoscience video and I kept using that word and people were like, but that's a proven thing. And I'm like, in my field, that is not. That is not what that is. It's just not how I think colloquially people use that. It is. So this is called the Orion Corelation Theory. And
okay,
it's a fringe theory. It is a full-blown fringe theory in Egyptology and technically also astronomy as well. And it was only introduced in 1989 by a guy named Robert Bauval, and he did publish it in a journal called Discussions in Egyptology. But this has also been expanded by other pseudoscientific authors, which I only know one of these guys by name, Adrian Gilbert and Graham fucking Hancock, which is hysterical because I have somehow avoided this man up until like literally a year and a half ago, and he wrote this in the 90s. So this has been around for a while. And as I said, the theory is that the three pyramids of Giza, pyramid of Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure, line up with the three main stars in Orion, which I do not know the names of, but that they align with those. And the thing is, as we have mentioned, we are all moving in space and things would be different. And you would assume that that also means that with this theory that they're coming out, they're talking about when it was in, the pyramids were built at roughly 3000 BCE. We'll just give that rough estimate. And so they would say, oh yeah, it's when the stars were there in 3000 BC. No, that's not what the actual theory is. And I did not know this until literally reading this like yesterday. This is, they are saying that the Giza pyramids are aligned with the relative position of the three stars as they appeared 10,000 years ago. Which, for Moohoodles, this might sound weird, but for anyone who is in the Egyptology field, you now know that this is now connecting to the illustrious theory that the pyramids and the Sphinx are older than they actually are. And this blew my freaking mind off because I'm like, oh my god, this is just another half of this theory that has become so prominent now, especially now.
I need more info on this.
Okay.
I need more info. Okay, older than they actually are. Does that have any like actual basis to it?
No. So it is.
Okay.
This is I would say honestly the main huge conspiracy theory about the Giza pyramids, like right now, especially right now. So I'm surprised that this happened in the 80s and 90s. I'm surprised that this is that old, essentially. And the basis, there's a couple little tiny bases that this has, and none of them are by actual Egyptologists. So here's like kind of the big basis is
great.
that one of the main theories, I don't know the guy's name, and it's honestly not worth it to even advertise him out there, is a geologist who wrote a research paper about the Sphinx specifically, and how there is erosion on the Sphinx, and that the date of this erosion is 10,000 years ago. And there are probably like specific things. Oh my goodness, we're getting a raid.
Oh, Dee, hello, welcome in, Raiders.
Welcome in, everyone.
We're doing, is it okay if I say
Go
hi
for it.
and do like a little what
Absolutely.
we're doing?
I'm gonna chug my water.
Yeah, so I'm streaming with MelissainDeNile. I will say her stream definitely looks better than mine. It's set up a bit better than mine is. So go check out her stream also. Leave a lurk in here if you want. But I do science communication on space and astrobiology. I also play variety games from retro up to newer stuff. And Melissa is an Egyptologist, archaeologist, an amazing streamer here on Twitch. So we're talking about our overlap: archaeology, astrobiology, and no aliens.
No aliens. No aliens.
Y'all came in at a great time as well. I'll let Melissa introduce herself and kind of go over what she was just saying. But welcome in, everyone. Also, if you are not following 8BitD, please follow her stream. She is incredible, does a whole bunch of retro games. She is so cool. Yeah, wonderful streamer. And thank you for raiding. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Oh.
So, for everyone coming in, my name is MelissainDeNile. I'm in denial in more ways than one. I'm an Egyptologist, archaeologist, and I stream Egyptology, archaeology, and history games, as well as doing guest lectures. This is our lovely Beyond Denial lecture series, season 3, and Moodles is our guest. So we, as she said, we are talking about this like lovely Venn diagram of our fields and the lovely weird conspiracy theories and such. And so Moodles gave me this huge question that I had to do some research on before we started. And this is perfect because this is literally what I'm about to do in my lecture next week about these kind of popular myths in Egyptology. These statements that just get passed around that don't fulfill the full crazy conspiracy theory, but like people just accept as truth. And this is one of these things. And Claire, I don't dig dinosaurs. No dinosaurs here. I don't know what I'm doing if I was digging up a dinosaur. And the theory is that the 3 pyramids of Giza, the pyramid of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, line up with the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And we have now discovered it is not true. It is this fringe theory that started in the late 80s. And the thing that is really carrying this theory is that it's not that the stars were aligned with it when the pyramids were actually built in and around 3000 BCE, but that the theory is that they were aligned 10,000 years ago. And so this is now this extension, or honestly, this might even be an early precursor of this current theory that the pyramids and the Sphinx are older than they think they are. And a couple of these fringe theories are based on, it sucks because I think they are actually based on like some different scientific testing. So for example, this geologist, he examined the Sphinx and he saw all this erosion on the body of the Sphinx. And he said, the only way that this could have been made is water erosion, which means that this was from 10,000 years ago. And we do know that very long time ago, Egypt used to be more wet. It used to be more of like a savanna. The Nile was much wider. And this is in before pre-dynastic Egypt, which can go to around 5000 BCE. 7000 BCE to 5000 BCE is kind of considered pre-dynastic Egypt. And essentially they're saying, well, it must have been water erosion, which meant somebody then built this Sphinx when it was this savanna-like thing. TikTok, I need you to not unconnect, please, for the love of God. Thank you. But here's the thing that I honestly did not know about until a couple years ago, is that the Sphinx, specifically, is made out of a natural outcropping of limestone on this bedrock. So
that's cool.
Instead of it being fully built out, like somebody takes bricks and fully builds it out and carves it, it's actually something called a yardang. If anybody wants to go look it up, a yardang is a naturally forming wind erosion stone, or like almost monolith sort of, where it's a large stone that's really high, and the wind erosion taking the sand around it will carve it so that it looks essentially like a little thin neck and a big head. And so yardang, there we go. Denoba's got it in the chat. So Yardangs, a lot of the pictures on those Wikipedia are from the White Desert outside of Egypt, or in Egypt, but outside of Giza, sort of. And so the Yardang is probably what the Sphinx naturally was. And hey, when you look at one of those things, it sort of looks like a head poking out of the sand. And literally may have, an Egyptian may have literally looked at that and said, that looks like a mighty person or lion or jackal. Because there's also lots of theories that the Sphinx was originally a jackal or originally had a lion face and now it's a human face. And those are like, anything's possible. Well, we don't have much evidence of it. And so the entire body of the Sphinx is the natural, like, Sphinx. Cassidy, that's also not true. Napoleon didn't shoot it off. I have a whole video about that on my YouTube if you want to watch that. It was most likely done in iconoclasm because of Islamic people who lived in Egypt later. So that's the easiest answer to that. But as another one of those very popular myths that we'll talk about next week. And so the bottom part of the Sphinx was slightly carved, and then the legs were added to with bricks, and then the face was entirely carved out of that natural stone. So if you test the stone, it probably is like 10,000 years old because it's a rock.
Oh.
It's a rock. And the erosion is probably that old because it's a rock. It's not that the concept that it is from 10,000 years ago, or it is so old, is that people are like, they're rearranging the timeline. They're saying that because this Sphinx is there and because the erosion is there, somebody already built it. But it's the opposite. The stone was already there and then somebody added to it later. And then there are a couple other ones that I'm not as familiar with where it has to do with the pyramids themselves, and it has to do with the mortar for some reason. Like some scientist out there tested the mortar and it turns out it's like thousands of years older or something. And it's just like, they are weirdly using like actual chemistry and actual like machines and things to like things that we use, like C14 dating and things like that. But the interpretation is where it goes off the rails and such. So yeah, so this, so I did look into it a little bit more when it comes to the Orion's belt. They don't really line up. And obviously they did not really line up 10,000 years ago because the pyramids didn't exist 10,000 years ago. And the other thing, there is a whole section, the Wikipedia of Orion Corelation Theory is what it's called, has a lot of really good citations and really good links at the bottom of astronomers who have gone through and said, wait, the lining up of the Orion's belt doesn't really fit with how the pyramids are. And then to top it all off, those three pyramids were built not at the same time. So they were built by essentially like father, grandson, great-grandson, sort of. So like over a couple generations. So it's like, it kind of, yes, were they probably done in that line because of just like the natural land. Well, actually, I do know that they were done in the natural landscape because eventually the reason Menkare's pyramid is so much smaller is because the natural outcropping of bedrock that all of the pyramids are placed on stops very shortly close to that pyramid, and so they couldn't build it any bigger, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so all of that to kind of top on top of it, that this is a fringe theory from the 80s that has obviously extended significantly because all of the pseudoscience stuff that came out, which I don't know if you saw any of that, Moohoodles, that was late last month into this month, where the giant pillars were discovered, big quotation marks, underneath the pyramids and stuff. And all of those, in my mind, they're all pointing towards this. The pyramids are older than people say they are. Archaeologists are lying to you. Don't believe scientists. Da 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 da. And
Ugh.
they're also one step to aliens. Like, in my opinion, these are people who want to believe in aliens, but they know that if they say aliens, people will think they are stupid, and so they are moving. They're like, they're one step away, because if you ask them, well, then who built them? They're gonna answer aliens, but they're gonna answer it in a very roundabout way of, oh, well, the ancient Egyptians 10,000 years ago, and then you say, what evidence do you have for the ancient Egyptians 10,000 years ago? And they have they have nothing.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But yeah.
Wow. I have a question about the so like going back to like the Sphinx and the rocks and everything. So have they then done dating on like the kind of like feet area, or not like the yarding outcrop thing?
I believe
and that like lines up like better.
I believe they have,
Yeah.
and it's
so
also hard to do dating as well, because one, dating is destructive on a lot of these things, and also I don't understand how C14 dating works a lot, but a lot of it has to do with carbon, and then sometimes there are things that are just too old that dating will not work, and so you have to use all the context of everything around it. And so like, we have written records of all of the pharaohs that include Khufu, that include even pharaohs before them. And so if we find something that has the name of Khufu in that layer of soil, then we know that it at least has to be from when Khufu ruled, or after, anytime after.
That's so cool.
And so like that's, we call that stratigraphy. Stratigraphy, it's used in geology, and it's sometimes used in paleontology, but it's not. Paleontology doesn't need it as much because they're not digging through soil, they're digging through rock. But it's all the layers of the earth and how the soil has settled, and all the artifacts that are then found in each of those layers. And so if you find, this is the best example I find, is like, if you find a penny that is dated to 1954 in this layer, then you know that layer has to at least date to 1954, because that's the date on the penny. And then everything above it is 1954 and later, and everything below it is before 1954. Unless you go a couple layers down and you find a 1953 penny, and then you're like, oh, wait. It's like those, yes, carbon 14 dating. But yeah, it's Egypt. When it comes to Egypt and when it comes to archaeology, you have certain items where you know when, you know what time some previous archaeologist has already written a timeline for you. When it comes to Egypt, it's pottery. Pottery has these distinct dates that have not really changed over time. Shout out to Flinders Petrie, first good, semi-good archaeologist who kind of set this entire thing up. And he, like, you can then look and say, hey, I found this type of pottery, that means it probably comes from this era or later, and stuff. So also, just a reminder for anyone in my side of the chat, if you do have a question, please use the lecture questions channel point so we don't lose it in the chat, because we got a shared chat, so there's lots of stuff going on. Yes, Jess, so carbon dating is technically living organic matter, but you can't, this is so confusing. I don't think you can carbon date a rock. I think there's other datings for rocks that you can use, but like mortar that was put in between all the rocks might have an organic material in there. So, but it's very confusing, and that is on the more sciencey side of me that I am used to. I'm an art historian. I don't know the science behind a lot of these things.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah, it's very cool. Apparently, there's also a subplot of this entire Orion theory where the Sphinx is supposed to be the constellation Leo, and like, it's literally, I guess Leo is really close to Orion. I don't know exactly where it is, but the stupid thing is that Leo is the concept of Leo as a zodiac is a Hellenistic idea. It was not around in the time of when the pyramids were built and when the Sphinx was built. Like, it got literally introduced thousands of years later. Um, so it's so annoying, and it's just one of those fun things that you just have to. But I truly, when people asked me those questions, for a long time before I did the research, I would say, yeah, that would make sense to me, because I know that the Egyptians were very in tune with the stars. They were very in tune with the equinoxes and the not eclipses, solstices. Like, they were in tune with that so well. So much so that
As were a lot of ancient cultures as well.
yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
there are in the blah blah blah, the Abu Simbel, in the massive temple for Ramses the Great, all the way down in Aswan, they lined it up with the solstice, that the sun would go straight through this huge temple and would shine in the Holy of Holies, where there are 4 statues of 3 major gods, and then Ramses the Great next to him, because he thought he was a god. And I hate Ramses the Great. I think he's so pretentious and whatever. But like, he lined it up perfectly. And that was done in a lot of different temple sites, because the sun was so important to them as a god and as all, like, the bringer of all life. So like, I'm 99% sure I've told people, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, that, I can't believe I kind of fell for it. It's kind of annoying. Just
fair enough. I think a lot of this stuff is like, I guess kind of I don't know if pseudoscience is fully the right word here, but a lot of the things that's like, I think people just want aliens to exist so much that they're grasping at whatever straws they can to have some sort of like evidence, because we don't have enough solid evidence yet. And I think all of this, stars lining up and the, pyramids being older than they thought, obviously I think they're misinterpreting or using their own bias on the data to have it kind of fit their, what they want it to fit, right? And no one wants aliens to exist more than me, I feel like. But we have to be very like empirical and like know what we're looking at and have actual like solid evidence.
There's a difference
we'll get into this more, but
there's a difference between belief and evidence and like truth. Absolutely. You can believe a lot of things. Like, I do believe in some sort of life out there. I do believe sort of in ghosts, but like, everything has a scale and stuff like that. And so it's like you gotta have evidence. Oh yes, correlation versus causation. Yes, very good, Jesse. Absolutely. Those are very, very important. Sorry, I see a question. Hi, Rocky. Have country conditions over the last 15 to 20 years impacted the field, specifically for researchers outside of the Middle East? In Egypt, yes, indeed they have. I am all for the modern Egyptians have done a very, very great job in embracing the culture that many of them do not identify with. It's one thing that's like weirdly something that you think about, that many of the modern Egyptian people do not identify with the ancient Egyptian people because of just a vast difference in mindset and culture, and with so many invasions and different groups living in Egypt that a lot of people do not identify with it. And the Egyptian, like, Supreme Council of Antiquities, they have done an amazing job taking over and kind of getting back their agency from all of the different European and American groups that were kind of both ruling over their actual politics and economics, but also ruling over antiquities. It has affected how some scholars and researchers outside of Egypt can work. I won't say a lot, though. I won't say it has done a lot, because almost, if you go to my TikTok and you look at any of my Egypt news videos, you will see that there are still tons and tons of groups that do excavations in Egypt. One of the big things is that Egyptian items cannot leave Egypt. So if you are doing a research project and you are doing an excavation, you cannot take your pieces back to your museum, your university, to either put on display or even just to study them, to conserve them, or do anything like that. They can't leave. You have to do all those things in Egypt. In some cases, like a couple years ago when I was in grad school, I had heard that They were canceling a lot of permits for international groups. I have not heard that recently, but Egypt also knows that tourism is their boom, is their big thing, and they know that their ancient cultures are the tourism boom. So they're not going to stop it anytime soon. It's just they want to control the narrative, and they are all for it. Let them do what they want to do. Absolutely. Any other major questions?
I feel like we had good. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I'm just reading through the chat.
I feel like we had good segue kind of going into like
absolutely,
into the aliens and the conspiracy theories, and even how the Egyptians built the pyramids in the first place, and how people that long ago were able to do those things, and how
absolutely.
They didn't need aliens to help them, because that bothers me so much.
Yes,
and I know it bothers you.
It bothers me so much, and it is one of those things that you don't it's one of those, you don't realize it's colonialism and racism, but then you realize it is, and it just
absolutely is.
And one of the things that I think is Jesse, we'll tie this into it as well. I have a question. That's actually one of the things we're also going to talk about next week, is the statement that slaves built the pyramids. That's another thing that is also tied all into kind of this thought that the Egyptians could not have done this. And it is all based on race. It is all based on people looking at this African nation, which many people don't associate it as an African nation. It's very, very complicated in that a long, long time Egyptologists did not associate it as an African nation because they didn't look like other African nations, and they were quote unquote more successful than African nations. And so Egyptology has been lumped into this group of ancient cultures, and then there's African art and African cultures, and they're separate. In some ways I understand it, in some ways I don't, because the other thing is Africa did not exist when Egypt was around. Africa is a continent, is just a landmass, unless you are thinking of it more culturally. So everything is all gets kind of separated in that. But the people who have always started to research Egypt were Europeans, and they were people who all automatically looked down on anyone pretty much outside of Europe. And so there is a very strong theory that happened, that was passed around, in that I'm trying to think of when this was, but this is probably 17 early 1800s, where there was a belief that the people who built the pyramids and the people who built all of the different ancient Egyptian structures were not from Africa, but were actually from Europe, and that they had invaded and overtaken those people in Africa at that time, and built the pyramids. And I know. And this is one thing that I recommend for everyone to do, if you are a history lover, if you are honestly, even in other fields, in astronomy and anything, there's something called historiography, which is the study of history. It is looking how people have studied history over time. And so this can be applied to any field. So this is looking how past astronomers have studied the field and studied all of these things. Because what you have to do is you have to look at, let's pick a random scholar named Bob from the 16 or 1700s. TikTok? I'm going to murder. Okay. You have this scholar, Bob. And Bob is living in a world that is very Christian-based, and is very white-based, and is very European-based. Bob the Obtuse. Yes, Claire, we'll call him Bob the Obtuse. And Bob is looking at a culture that he has never seen before, and that he has absolutely no idea what it is. And he is going to take his preconceptions of what the world is supposed to be, and he's going to write that in his history of that world. He's not going to be he's going to be very biased. And that is what, as much as you can try, you are always going to leave some of your bias in anything you write as a scholar. Really, like, it's very hard.
Yeah, even if it's not intentional.
It's so hard. And in anthropology, we call it ethnocentrism, which is trying to leave all of your preconceptions of what is normal behind. And like, if you see somebody in a culture where the women are bare-chested, and you look at them and you say, oh my gosh, that's so bad, why is she just sitting like there? That woman's probably looking at you saying, why is she covering the most beautiful thing? Because that is her concept, that is her culture, that is her life. And so you have to take that step back.
How is that weird to have that, like...
Yeah. It's like, it's... and I've had to catch myself a lot of saying, like, oh my god, that's so weird. That is ethnocentrism. Like, you have to take that step back. Different. Everything is different, and you got to just be accepting, because everyone has a different mindset, and this includes the past. Like, I find that word is only used in anthropology when you're looking at cultures that are still alive and still, like, around, and I'm like, no, we got to use this all time, because you can't just look back. I hate to say it, the Victorians get the worst rap of, like, they're so weird, and I'm like, guys, they were learning. Just give them some slack. I know they were weird, but, like, in your mind, just give them some slack.
It's normal for them. Yeah.
It's normal for them.
I do think it's important to keep that in mind on, like, a day-to-day basis, though. Just because someone is different than you in some way, shape, or form doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. You know, especially when we look at other countries and people from other cultures, just wherever, you know. I think it's very important to keep in mind. And I love that we're relating it to, like, history and everything also, because it's, very, very evident at times with some specific biases. Like, you know, they weren't good enough to build the pyramids or whatever. And even earlier I mentioned when you were talking about them lining up the sun and how cultures, you know, really like the solstice, ancient Egyptians, you know, like the solstice. And I mentioned, and so many other cultures. It's not to diminish the ancient Egyptians doing really cool things. It's just, I know there were so many ancient cultures, and cultures, like, people who are still around today, by the way. A lot of Native Americans also have these beliefs and do these things.
Absolutely.
And it is just so not okay to brush it aside and act like that didn't exist back then. Like, it's saying that they're, like, lesser than us in some capacity. And even just saying, like, you know, ancient cultures did this, like, you know, Native American cultures have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're still doing these things today. And I think it's important to be aware of that as well. I feel like I didn't word that as well as I wanted to, but
no, absolutely.
Hopefully the point comes across still.
No, absolutely. I was trying to think of the other ancient culture that I know does the same thing. And it's, if anyone's been to Ireland in, north of Dublin, there's a site called Newgrange, and it's a Neolithic burial site, and it also lined up with the solstice every year. And it's similar to the one that's in Egypt. You can pay a very big special ticket to, like, be inside of the tomb when the solstice comes in at, like, through the door, and, like,
that would be so cool.
It was so cool. And I will say, when you go on the tour to there, like, somebody takes you inside there and they describe it to you, and I think they shine a light when it's not the solstice in there. And I, like, closed my eyes and I listened to this tour guide, and I literally almost started crying. Like, she had the most, like, peaceful, beautiful voice, as, like, describing, like, the sun just, like, coming in on the special. I was like, oh my god. I was like, I felt very one. And it's a really, really
you felt
great.
The oneness.
Yeah. It's a really
cool.
great site. But yeah, like, there's all these, you have to, it sucks, because it's like, I feel like, this is gonna sound silly, I feel like the newfound racism is aliens. That theory, it sounds stupid. I know it sounds stupid, but it's like,
No, I get what you mean though. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like this theory that when it came to the pyramids in Egypt, like it was that they were white people originally. And then it's like, oh, well, we can't do that. And it's like, well, we might as well blame it on aliens. And it just, it makes me sad because, like, the reason I got into the ancient Egyptians when I was so young was because it was just such a different world, and it was just so different from the world that I knew, and it just amazed me, and I was like, oh, it just was amazing and beautiful and so different. And I have found, like, as I have like matured and as I have done research, I've realized I was definitely like putting them on a pedestal, and I feel like a lot of people put the ancient Egyptians on a pedestal. Like, they are just like us. They have silly like they are just like us. They do all these kind of silly things. Like, yes, they have all these like crazy religious like things, but they're just people. Like, I liked looking at all the objects that were just like, it's a spoon. That's all it is. It's just a spoon. And it's like just those simple things that like a person actually touched and used in their day-to-day life. And it's something that I've just, they've become more down to earth to me, like, over time. And that this theory that people don't believe that they're just like us, that they are amazing engineers just like us, who build massive structures and use technology and all of that stuff. It's like, why don't you think, why? If you're impressed with people now, like, how can you not be impressed with people from the past who do pretty much the same things? Yeah, I don't know.
I totally get that. And no, I do agree, because it's like, oh, they weren't able to do it. Clearly it was aliens. And it's like, there's no evidence for that. No, I don't think it was. Yeah.
It cracks me up because
I don't want aliens to be used as like I don't think scapegoat is even the right word. But yeah, like, you know, give them their credit. Like, they did the things. It's not aliens.
It's not aliens. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those crazy things. It's just one of those things that I'm just like, I don't know why you need that excuse. And my favorite thing is, like, it was aliens, and yet there is literally not even a single picture of an alien. Like, nothing. There's nothing.
So.
Oh, I have a feeling I know what you're gonna ask. But there's just nothing. There's just
Thank you.
Yes, there's a new raid.
Thank you for the raid, by the way. Welcome in. I do space and astrobiology, science communication, and variety games. I'll let Melissa introduce herself too.
I'm MelissainDeNile. I'm in denial in more ways than one. I'm an Egyptologist archaeologist, and I stream Egyptology archaeology games and host lovely guest lectures and such. We are talking about our lovely Venn diagram of astrobiology and archaeology, which is conspiracy theories about aliens. And I'll use this as a transition point of what's the worst conspiracy theory you've ever heard about space travel. And I'm gonna say, instead of like I'm talking worst by like the most destructive to like the knowledge we have and like the actual space field, because we will talk about the crazy ones that we all can just laugh about, because I think we each have one of each of these.
Yeah, I have a crazy one, I have a destructive one.
Yeah, what is your destructive one?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just with what you were talking about earlier, you know, how there's, you know, no images or anything of you know, aliens and stuff. I know, I'm gonna call it out right now. I know that Ancient Alien show is like, look at this stuff that was engraved on the pyramids and all of these old ancient things, and clearly it's an alien. Yeah. I hate that stuff, and I would just want to let people know that there is a whole YouTube series debunking every little thing in that entire show. So I would suggest if you were going to be like, but aliens, please watch that, learn a little bit more. A lot of other scientists and people in all of those fields, or who study those different cultures across time, are like, no, with that stuff. And that's who you want to listen to, is the experts in the field, not someone, you know, profiting off a show being like aliens, right? Yeah, I think the most destructive conspiracy theory, I think I have two. Yeah, go for it. So the first one, bear with me here. I think the first one might be that we never landed on the moon in the
I
first place. And
I
I
was
think
thinking you
it's
were gonna pick that one. I wanted to ask you
I
about
think
that one.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's the most destructive because it made a lot of people, so not only is it like the gateway conspiracy theory to
Mm-hmm.
just get you to fall down the rabbit hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is so destructive in the way that it made a lot of people be like, well, NASA's liars. Clearly they're lying about things. They didn't really do it. And then that just extrapolates to like, defund NASA. I don't trust anything that they're
Mm-hmm.
saying. And clearly they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Like, why do you
Mm-hmm.
not think we couldn't go to the moon in the 60s just because we didn't have cell phones at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. It's just it's a whole thing. And I mean, it almost kind of goes back to how people don't think the ancient Egyptians couldn't have done it. Like, they
Yeah.
don't think
It's
we couldn't
very
have done it. Like,
similar.
it's really weird. And I have a few things, I guess, about this theory to, or sorry, conspiracy theory,
Conspiracy theory.
to address. And I think, how do I word this? It could maybe be one of the more like believable conspiracy theories. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of why it's a gateway one.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, maybe we couldn't have done it back then. But it's really easy to debunk. You can look at the surface of the moon and you can see the landing site where Apollo 11
Mm-hmm.
landed, and the landing module is there.
Yeah.
There's images of it. And I think even better evidence is that Russia acknowledged that we landed on the moon back then. If our like opponent, our
That's a
enemy
lot to
at the
say.
time,
Yeah.
who we were trying to beat in the
Mm-hmm.
space race, was like, you landed on the moon, okay, you won. Like, that is probably some of the best evidence for it also. And yeah, like I just feel like there's no there's no point to it, but it's just such a bummer that a lot of people have been like, oh, well, clearly we didn't land on the moon, and then it just goes off the deep end into other conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that one has been really, really weirdly destructive, and that obviously leads to other ones, which we'll talk about in a minute. But
Yeah.
it, yeah, I wish it wasn't so destructive.
It's a sucky one.
The other
Yeah.
one, oh yeah, no, it definitely is. And I just really hate that it made people like somehow not trust NASA, or not to think that this
Yeah.
stuff is real, or that we can't do it, because we can, and we have, and we've done it a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to do it in 1969, like literally 3 months, I think, after the original series of Star Trek ended. And if
Yeah.
y'all are Trekkies or you've seen the original series, like, they had cool futuristic things like communicators before we had cell phones and all of this other cool stuff. It's really impressive that we were able to do it, and it's just so cool. So yeah, I hate that one. That one hurts, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of, especially nowadays, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, NASA's lying, defund NASA, and they just have no, like, literally no idea what they're talking about, which
Yeah.
is a bummer.
Absolutely.
I think the other conspiracy theory, and I'll try to word this one well, but I
Mm-hmm.
think something along the lines of just aliens, UAP things, maybe like aliens are walking among us, like X-Files-y things. I don't know. But I think for astrobiology, there's maybe like the little green men visiting us thing almost. I don't know. But I think there is a specific nuance that we need to take with this stuff. And I've talked about it on my stream a few times. I know now, instead of saying UFOs, they've like rebranded to UAP, the unidentified aerial phenomenon, instead of unidentified flying object.
Got it.
Because UFO and like the little green men and all of that stuff has just kind of tainted, for lack of a better word, like the conspiracies of it have kind of tainted a very valid and real scientific study into this stuff, because there are actually unidentified aerial phenomenon that, the military and everyone is like, we actually genuinely don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And that's why they did the whole debriefing thing on UAP stuff, and we're looking into it over the past few years. And there are like legitimate scientific studies now, and everything, trying to look into things and see what it is, or pointing things at the sky and looking at all of it. And I think those are all logical steps that we should be taking in the field, just in case there is something, we want to find it, but we can't just say aliens because we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We need some evidence, and we need it to repeat itself, blah, blah, blah. But I think kind of having that, like, alien little green men, oh, they visited us, oh, UFOs, all of this, like the kind of conspiracy theories that I yeah, I kind of struggle with exactly how to word it, but I think now I'm trying to be like, okay, this could be like, you know, an actual like it is kind of part of astrobiology in a way, is trying to figure out what these unidentified phenomenon are, but also like really we are looking for life out there, whether that's bacterial life in the solar
Yeah.
system or outside of it, or maybe that is intelligent life, and that's something that needs to be seriously considered. So I don't want people like, you know, getting mad at the scientists looking into UAP things, being like, oh, they're just, you know, they don't know anything, they're like being silly or something, because there is some validity to it, but there's also like there's a line to be drawn. And with the UAP stuff, you saw people like getting mad at the people looking into it, being like, you're hiding things, but also being like, no, you're being ridiculous, you're wasting your time and like scientific expertise or whatever. And it's like there needs to be like a, you know, let's make amends on both sides and really just clear your mind and like just go for it and be like, okay, we're going to try to get to the bottom of it in a more serious way. So
this always
I don't know if that made much sense.
It did. And this has always been something that genuinely annoyed me of the word UFOs, because it could just be, it's an unidentified object. Like, it is so vague. And it always kind of cracked me up. And it's like, if it's a UFO, it's an alien. And I was just like, but it's like,
no.
And like, I always hated that term because I was just like, we just don't know what that is. Like, that is just an I don't know sticker on top of something. And so it is really interesting that they have changed that name, because I hadn't I've not been keeping up with that side of like science and stuff. Oh. And I've always said like, yeah. I weirdly like, I kind of believe that there is some intelligent life out there, but it is more based on a kind of just a feeling that I hope that we are not the only ones kind of out there in kind of a way. It's not really based on anything like of my knowledge. But one of the things I've always said is that if we eventually do find any sort of other life forms, they could look exactly like us. Like, the whole thing is like, they are not the little green men. Like, they could literally be us, just in like in just another place over there. And so it always annoyed me by those things, because I was just like, I hate now how also, I hate how the word alien has these two very distinct meanings now, in that it means like what the very basis of the word alien doesn't mean it's somebody that is foreign, almost, in a way, like, and that is foreign of a country or foreign of the globe. And I hate that they are being used in two completely different spheres now, and especially in our political climate that we're going on right now. And I'm just like, we need a different word. There needs to be a different word for both of these things. Like, I know they technically mean the same things, but when I read it in the news, I'm like, that's not what that means. I'm thinking of the little green man. And I'm like, it's one of those things I was thinking about the other day. I was like, yeah, maybe that's like why you have to use the extraterrestrial versus alien. I do prefer, I think, extraterrestrial, that it's like somebody that is not of the earth. But no, it makes total sense. Those are very, very destructive. Very, just like, and we were saying this earlier, that like, I was so sad with all of this pseudoscience that was coming out, and the comments, the amount of people that just don't trust archaeologists and don't trust scientists. And actually, we were talking about this before Moo Hoodles came on, in that, like, I understand that some people might not trust a government because they do hide things. They do the things for these things. Like, somebody mentioned very early on that, like, the USSR, when they were doing a lot of early space stuff, is that they hid any sort of failure that they had, which makes sense in my mind, because there was this battle between the US and that area. But why don't you trust actual scientists who have spent years like dedicating their lives, and like, archaeologists are doing nothing. Like, we're not affecting anybody, so much so that a lot of people say that our job is pointless, and that our job is like, I've had this said to me, that it's like, what is the point of your job? And I'm just like, I know I am not solving world hunger. I am not trying to say that we are more important than world hunger
Yeah.
and anything like that. I know that. Believe me, I do. But these things need to continue to be talked about because life does continue and life does
So
duplicate, repeat. Um,
I I get similar, and I get
mm,
also people being like, what is NASA doing? Why don't you like spend? And I see it on all the social media, like, why aren't you solving cancer? Why aren't you helping world hunger? And
yeah.
it's like, hey, you don't actually know NASA does do that. NASA is working on that. But also like, who cares? The things that makes humanity beautiful is that people have different interests and we all
and
love different things.
and we can do what
Like,
we
what are they
want.
doing? Like, what is that person doing with their life? And how
Mm-hmm.
dare they try to talk down on someone else for following their dreams and following their passions? And that's what makes me so mad about it, is
Yeah.
like, I have a feeling they're doing something that they don't enjoy. And why
Ah.
don't they go be the person to solve cancer or help world hunger? Why aren't they doing it? They're not
Mm-hmm.
doing anything about it except complaining on social media. I
Yep.
just, oh, those
Mm-hmm.
people, no, get
I
out of
am one
here.
of those. I am one of those people that I know that I do not. I accepted that my job would make me no money, and I'm living it now because this is my passion, and like this is what I want to do, and that I I don't understand. Like this is a genuine like thing with my how my mind works socially. I don't understand people who work a job just for money and do their passion as like a hobby. That makes no sense in my brain because my job is my passion, my job is my life, and I have these two major jobs. I do this is the way that I can continue to do Egyptology, even though in my real life, in my real job, I'm not doing Egyptology. I'm doing archaeology and history and museum studies. But it's like, in my dating sphere, I've met people that they're like, I love to travel. I love to go and do all these things. Oh, but I do. And I'm like, but what do you do for work? And they're like, oh, I just go to work. And I'm like, I just don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense in my mind, because that's just how my mind works. Um,
I get you. Yeah, I feel very passionate to be able to be streaming full time, which has been my passion for,
yeah,
over a decade now. So, yeah.
exactly. Um, I would say for Egyptology, the most destructive conspiracy theories, I think, are the ones that we just talked about with the pyramids, um,
Hmm.
because the pyramids tend to be one of like the gateway drugs into archaeology, and stuff uh it is just, they're huge and people want to research them and stuff, and the just crazy range of conspiracy theories, some of which are, yes, Maddie, we were talking about that a little bit ago, like the racism that, but there's also some that are very simple and kind of like you said, like there are these conspiracy theories that, like, I hate to say it, make sense. One of the big ones that I have noticed in kind of this whole tie-in with what do the pyramids do is like kind of the big question, is that people don't believe that the pyramids are tombs. And I think that probably within the grand scheme, like if we're going to take a step away from the alien conspiracy theories, in the grand scheme of things, is that people don't understand what the pyramids do. And so they have to come up with all these different theories as to what they were. One of the current ones is that the pyramids were giant batteries, um, which is great. And I love whenever somebody asks me that, then I say, hey, what were they powering? And I don't get an answer because there's no answer. Because it's usually aliens. Because it usually, again, like, we're on the scale of normalcy to aliens, and we're just one step in from aliens. But one of the big things that people have always, like, for these excuse is that there isn't any decoration inside the pyramids of Giza, and there were no mummies found inside the pyramids of Giza. And that's true. The pyramids of Giza are perfectly plain on the inside. They have nothing, no decoration. And when they were discovered by Westerners, yeah, there weren't any mummies inside. Because people looted the shit out of them and then put other bodies back in there, and then they were looted again. And like it just makes me crazy that people think that that's not a good enough answer. And I'm like,
yeah,
people, like, they took them. People took them because they've been open for a really long time. And the other thing is like Star said, no tombs at that time had decoration. And if there was any decoration, it could have been on their giant temples that were outside the tomb, because the tomb was not meant for people to enter all the time. It was sealed. That's all they needed. Like, and I think weirdly, one of the destructive conspiracy theories, and this isn't really the theory, but this is what I always point out to the conspiracy theorists, they only focus on the pyramids of Giza. Like, truly. Like, they literally...
Do they know other ones exist?
I don't know! And this is genuinely so infuriating. There are 60 pyramids, around 60 pyramids in Egypt. There are 80 pyramids outside of Egypt in Sudan, just south of Egypt. And they're small. They're not the same types of pyramids. There are so many pyramids. And so there was one, I got really salty on somebody on YouTube a while back, and they only were talking about the Giza pyramids. And I was like, okay, what about the Step Pyramid of Djoser? What about the Meidum Pyramid? What about the Bent Pyramid? And then I dropped, like, what about the Maguzma pyramids? Which, like, are not even pyramids anymore. Like, it's just a flat, it was a pyramid that was maybe going to be built but never finished. But I'm like, what about the Maguzma pyramids? What about the Amenemhet III pyramid? What about Pepi II's? What about Teti? What about, I could, like, name off all these pyramids that are protected for some reason and do not get these conspiracy theories for no reason. Like, there's no explanation as to why these conspiracy theories do not target other pyramids. Like, it is genuinely wild how, like, I don't know, they're just so focused on these ones. And yes, are they the biggest? Are they in the best condition? Yes, but, like, to be honest, they're beautiful. They're lovely. They're not my favorite pyramid. They're by far not a lot of people's favorite pyramid, probably. And so it's like, I don't know. And yeah. And
like cognitive dissonance, just
yeah. And so I feel like, unfortunately, that is like one of just the biggest destructive, like, conspiracy theories. There are definitely other ones that I wouldn't even classify as conspiracy theories, because I think they are just more, I don't know, like misinformation campaigns almost. There's a lot of stuff about Cleopatra and her race. I think race theory and all of that in Egypt, like, those aren't conspiracy theories, but those are these kind of just huge umbrella topics that are just really difficult to talk about, in especially any sort of short format. But yeah, conspiracy theories, the pyramids are just this the pyramids of Giza, which is this main focal point of stuff. So what about your silly conspiracy theory that is, like, at this point you just kind of go like, oh, whatever, like, your face.
I think you can guess that one, maybe, but you probably know what I'm about to say.
I probably know it. I knew you were going to say moon landing for the first one. This one I'm not so sure, but I knew moon landing was going to be here somewhere. Is it that, like, they had to film a fake moon landing? Is that what is? Because I was thinking about that one.
Flat Earth, I think, is just the most ridiculous thing in existence, and the fact that anyone believes that is so beyond me. Like, I don't give that any time of day on my stream, and if people come in and, like, I'll give them a warning if they joke about it, but I'm like, we don't even joke about that, because there's people who genuinely do believe it, and it has no basis, no sense. Like, I'm sorry, our education system failed you is literally what that is. And, like, to extrapolate on that, because I know it's like, you know, what is the craziest conspiracy theory? There is one that takes that a step further.
Oh God.
Which is, there's a flat Earth on top of a sphere that is ice and it is hollow. And that is just this like
I've heard
stupidest
of that
thing I have
one.
ever heard.
It's,
And
it's
yeah,
absolutely
it's
wild.
like it makes no sense in any way. Like flat earth does not make any sense
No,
mathematically, anything. Like, I'm sorry people don't understand math, and if they don't
I just
understand it, I'm sorry they can't trust people who do understand it. But like
I just love
that
that.
stuff, I just
Until you said flat Earth, I never thought about it that if we were a flat Earth, we would be a giant frisbee, like launching through the universe, which would be
we
crazy
would.
to think about.
Yeah.
That
Oh
is so funny
man.
because that is just like I would have thought of that eventually, but in my mind that is so left field. I was like, that's not even worth the time. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, that's my favorite thing about the stupid flat earthers, and you probably know the specific. There were two flat earthers that wanted to prove the earth was flat, and so they did like a test where they stood a certain distance away and they had like a big board with a tiny pinhole, and one guy had a light, and so he was like, well, because the earth is flat, when I shine this light, because they were at a certain distance, you should just see the light straight. And they were filming this entire thing, which is the best part. And then when they did it, he's like, I can't see the light. I can't see the light. And he goes, lift it above your head. And so the guy lifts it above his head, and then he can see it, which would be literally the perfect angle of the earth.
Yeah. Like,
And it was all filmed, and it was all set. Like, why? That's my favorite part. Is like, why would you film that and publish it? Like, I can understand that
I mean,
you would be embarrassed and you wouldn't publish it.
yeah.
Why would you publish that out into the world?
I mean, did they even change their mind afterwards though?
I
'Cause I
don't
think
think
those
so,
people
and
are
that's so
like,
stupid.
I don't want to say, I don't want to say they're so far gone, but they're just so far
They're so
into,
far
and I mean,
gone.
this relates to, you know, the current climate we're in nowadays as well, of like,
Mm-hmm.
people just can't accept something opposing their views because they've
Yes.
made it so much of who they are and of
Mm-hmm.
their identity that they can't be like, oh, I was actually wrong. And it takes a big person to realize that they were wrong or
Yeah,
realize they made a mistake, especially when they've put so much of themselves into it. And I think it's
absolutely.
important to, you know, try to welcome those people and be like, hey, if you messed up, it's all right, you can still
It's
join
alright.
us, you've changed your mind. Like, growing as a person is such a big and important thing to do, especially being introspective and learning. But it makes me so sad because I think a lot of the flat earth people are just so far off the deep end that they're not coming back because they're like,
No.
no, I've dedicated so much time and energy, like I know I'm right, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't have any evidence for it except
No.
really extremely flawed evidence that shouldn't be good enough for them, but they don't know any better. And
Yeah.
it's brutal. It's brutal.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
My silliest conspiracy theory is a much smaller silly conspiracy theory that I've just read somewhere, where um a very famous Egyptologist that I'm not going to name, but people will know who I'm talking about. He wrote in the intro of a book that I read that he had an office in Cairo, and apparently some guy came into the office at one time and said that that he knew that there was a secret tunnel going from this guy's office to the pyramids, and that it was through his bathroom. And that this Egyptologist was just like, go right ahead, go look in the bathroom. And Cairo and Giza are not close together. Like, they are technically, like, they butt up against each other. It takes like an hour in traffic to get to where they wanted to go. But yeah, that's like one of the like the silly ones. But for the most part, it's so funny how usually alien theories in my field, those are the silly ones. It's like, as soon as I see someone talking about aliens, I just am like, okay, yeah, you got your own beliefs. Like it's the ones that are the ones we've been talking about that are the step off of aliens, that are crazy but plausible. And it's like those ones are those the really destructive ones. But when they go to aliens, I'm always just like, oh, not that bad. But I know it does, like, it is bad in a lot of ways. There's a lot of subtle ones that always get kind of spread around, like social media and Facebook, that are easily explainable if you take the time to explain it. So the really big ones are the dendro light bulb and the Abydos flying cars. Those are the two big ones. And it cracked me up because I went to both of these places last year when I went to Egypt. And I forgot about them. I just forgot because these things just get spread around so much, and I was just like, I just forgot. And if Claire wants to, Claire or like Maddie, somebody can send a picture in the chat of these two things. So the Dendera light bulb is in the Temple of Dendera, which we talked about earlier, is a Greco-Roman temple in southern Egypt. And there's a giant... I'm not going to say it doesn't look like a light bulb, because it does look like a light bulb. It's this giant, long thing that looks like one of those old-timey light bulbs. And there's this long, like, line going down the center of it. When you look very closely at the line down the center of it, though, it's a snake. He's got a little snake face. It is a snake inside a giant flower bud. I do admit, I'm not going to say it doesn't look like a light bulb, because it does. It just does. And then what Claire just put in my chat, the helicopter hieroglyphs or the flying car hieroglyphs is in Abydos in the temple. And this one is more complicated to explain, but they are two sections of hieroglyphs that look like a helicopter and looks like a little Jetson flying car, sort of. And the complicated thing about that one is that if you know the history of the temple, it will make sense. In that this is a mortuary temple originally for Seti II, and then his son Ramses the Great came in and he kind of usurped and added on to it. And so what happened is that Seti I, he carved his name, and he carved a certain different thing, a certain text on this. And then when Ramses II came in, he plastered the entire thing and then recarved it. And plaster is not that strong, not as strong as stone, so then the plaster pieces fall out, and it just very closely looks like a helicopter and a flying car. But like, again, the small little tiny section of that gets posted everywhere and people talk about it. But if you zoom out and you look at the rest of it, it is complete gibberish. It makes no sense. And like, you would look and be like, something's wrong here. Like, it's not, it would be completely different if it was a tiny little flying car and a helicopter in a huge, beautiful scene of like, I don't know, a garden scene. Like that's different. And so those two things...
Yeah, the context makes no sense.
Yeah. Those two things get spread around like wildfire and on social media with very little context, with very little anything. And you're just like, people just accept it as gospel. And the problem is that then it also becomes very much part of the tourism. You do go to these two temples. Some people go to just see those. And, it's just it's silly, but you do need that context, and that's nobody goes for context these days. It's too much. It's too much effort for them if they see it on social media. How do we know they changed it?
Pareidolia is real. Yeah.
We know they changed it because the temple has two extremely distinct styles between the father and son. Like, it is one half of the temple is in one particular style and decorated a certain way, and then on the other side it's decorated in a completely different way. And then when you look at it very, very carefully, you can see that these different hieroglyphs it's just like you said, it's almost two different fonts were put on top of each other, and two different texts, and then all of the filler parts fell out. And so you can actually, if you Google it, you will be able to see an image where somebody has separated the two versions of the text and how they line up to each other. Like, I think the helicopter is made out of a bow, like a bow and arrow, and an arm hieroglyph. I think that's how that helicopter sort of makes and stuff. Yeah. we had one question. Another reminder for anyone. If anyone has any questions that they want either of us to answer on my half, you can use the lecture question channel point. It's only one channel point so that everyone gets, all the questions get filtered through. But we got a question from FICO that I think will fit in very nicely. What do both of you think is the biggest contributor for people distrusting experts from your field? And how can that be combated to make people more curious and less trusting with social media nonsense? Yeah, I got it, Claire. I can see it here. So the biggest contributor for people distrusting experts, and I think definitely the conspiracies that we just talked about absolutely is one of the biggest contributors. Mm-hmm. I'll just start off with something I have realized that is technically something that archaeologists themselves have actually done to contribute to this distrust themselves. But it's a weird double-edged sword. People will sometimes say to me, one of my most popular video series on TikTok is my Egypt news. And I say the news. I tell whenever something is discovered, whenever a paper is published, I try to make a video about it. And some people have commented, wow, why is there so much things being discovered in Egypt instead of around the rest of the world? And I tell them very honestly, archaeology is going on 24 hours a day, every single day, all around the globe. You just don't know it because of a couple reasons. One, it takes a really long time to publish things nowadays. Back in the day, it did not. Back in the day, it was very quick, and you could publish things really easily, but it takes a lot of time to publish these scholarly papers and get them out. Two, some stuff is not newsworthy. Most stuff is not newsworthy. Or at least what I think it's more even the archaeologists themselves don't think it's newsworthy. Like, there is some stuff that I always say, like, I had a lot of trouble thinking of fun facts, because in my mind, a fun fact has to be something very exciting and very fun. And at one point I just realized, for people who don't know anything about the topic, everything is a fun fact. And so it's like, I think archaeologists themselves, like, don't realize that a lot of the stuff that they could talk about, people will be interested in. But unfortunately, the third reason is because we can't talk about it as much and as soon after we discover something because of the threat of looting. And that is a absolutely enormous threat all over the world. And there are definitely areas where it is more threatened. But for the longest time, it's been because of looting. We cannot say, hey, in this really small town in Egypt, we just found this huge tomb. Isn't it so cool? We just found it yesterday. You can't do that. Because some idiot who thinks they are better or thinks that they can go and sell that thing on the black market is going to go and start digging up shit. And this is obviously after hundreds and hundreds of years of people doing this. Is that unfortunately, we have to kind of stay quiet sometimes. And it's sad because it's like, we can't talk about these things. And for example, in my field school, we had a huge site in the middle of Italy, and right next to us was a small airfield, and there were people who would do helicopter flying lessons very frequently, and they would fly over our site all the time. And we were told that if there was ever some sort of big discovery over the 5 weeks that we were there, that we cannot gather in really big groups because someone might see, and overnight someone might get onto the site and loot it. Yeah, it is prominent everywhere. And I had an acquaintance of mine who was on a separate excavation. He discovered a huge hoard of Neolithic axe heads in the UK. He couldn't talk about it on social media for 6 months until they officially announced it, after it had been fully excavated and taken out and
Sure.
all of those things. He could not talk about it. So it is this unfortunate, like, kind of double-edged sword where we have sort of made that barrier, but the public has also made that barrier for us. We've both built it on either side. And so that is, I think, why public archaeology is such a kind of new field, because especially I work in an archaeology museum, and I work in a city that we have one of the best laws in the United States for archaeology, and that any time any sort of building is being developed, they have to go through our archaeologist and our department to get approvals. And essentially we might have to put down the gavel and say, you have to hire an archaeology group to do the excavation before you build anything. And that's not how it is done in the US, pretty much almost anywhere. Yeah. But we do get people all the time who come in and tell us about all the things they've dug up in their garden, and we have to kind of put on a straight face and say, please call us next time. You live in the city, we have the opportunity. We had a family come in, not from our city, but from nearby, and brought us a shit ton of stuff that we very graciously looked at, told them about, gave them as much information, gave them contacts for their county's archaeologist, all of that stuff. But it's so nerve-wracking because you're like, please don't do that. You're destroying the history because you do that, even though I know you're interested. But unfortunately, the county they live in doesn't have the support that our city does, so they can't really do it. And one of my coworkers said, I would rather talk to that lady than talk to somebody who's bringing in rocks telling me that they see faces, because that also happens in the museum quite frequently. But yeah, so do you have a similar, how can we be more trusting? I think the answer to that question is we need to continue public archaeology and telling the public about the laws and about the rules and showing them. Like, we have to just continue teaching and continue talking about it. Is there a same thing for astronomy and astrobiology?
That's a good question. I think I had a few other things to like add to what you were saying before also. On the person that commented about how they, weren't getting the news or, much news like outside of Egypt or whatever. I think, the source of their news could definitely be the reason for that. And also, if they're just on social media getting news from there, they're probably being fed what the algorithm's feeding them, which is probably Egypt stuff. So yes, I think that's always something I talk about on my stream a lot, is like, where are you getting your sources? How are things going? Because, there's some sources that are like, hey, we just found life on an exoplanet. But if you look at the good sources, it's like, yeah, we need more evidence. We found like a possible signature, but blah, blah, blah. There's more nuance to be had on things. But yeah. And that said, there's things we don't have evidence for, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, in both of our fields. And with alien things, that's a very extraordinary claim, and there is, not much evidence for it. So you can't use lack of evidence for something.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I feel like I don't know. I might need to repeat the question before, but maybe I answered it earlier also.
It was like we answered the kind of like, what do you think the biggest contributor for people distrusting experts? And I feel like most of these conspiracy theories are unfortunately the answer to that. But it's like, how can that be combated to make people more curious and less trusting of the social media nonsense and stuff?
Oh yeah, I think just learning about definitely learning about like the sources you're getting your information from, and try to get it from like trusted sources. And I do think a lot of science communication definitely helps overall. There's been a lot of scientists in, all of the astronomy fields, like cosmology and astrobiology, just all of the little subfields, who are talking about things and kind of helping people learn stuff, which is great. I think recently I've seen a lot of articles that are talking to the scientists that published the paper, getting some more of their insight and having those scientists actually do a bit of science communication, which has been incredible. So I think people working in the fields, if they want people to understand what they're doing and they want support of people, I've been really loving seeing scientists take the time to, interview with a whatever news website or whatever journal, or even take the time to like post about it on social media or whatever else, because those things do make a really big difference. And yeah, I think just people kind of knowing critical thinking skills and being aware of the information that they're intaking and making sure that it's from trusted sources, and yeah, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, very randomly, I just realized my timer has the wrong date. My next lecture is the 27th, not the 29th. I just realized that right now. And this actually is answer to another question from 1237 about mummia. We're going to talk about that on the 27th on my lecture. It's a lovely, weird, semi-misinformation thing that does get spread around, that like the quote that Victorians ate ancient Egyptian mummies, like that statement. We are going to talk about that in my myth busting lecture next week, but it's the 27th, not the 29th. It's it's semi true and semi not true. It's there again, these very short statements that get spread around via social media, and it's like, that's the statement that the Victorians ate ancient Egyptian mummies. That statement is not true, but not because of what you think it is. It's because of it's not the Victorians. in a wild thing that we will talk about next week to answer that question. And then
I hope I can make it to that stream, because that sounds amazing.
I do also have a video that's on my YouTube about it. It's very short, but I had to make I also have a whole little series of videos about it on TikTok, but it's so hard to explain. It's a very detailed thing about mistranslations and such. But Vev has a very good question about is there and this is a question for you as well, because I just don't know as much. Do you guys in your field have as much of a paywall barrier than I think some like archaeology and history has when it comes to like especially new research coming out? Do you guys have lots of paywall barriers?
What do you mean by paywall barrier?
Like an article
the study is paywalled, or
like the article is on a special journal that you have to pay or have to be part of a university subscription.
Yeah,
like,
so that's what I assume you meant, but I was like wanting to double check. So no, actually. There's some with paywalls, but I know in astronomy and stuff at least, or maybe all around, you can like email the author and they'll send you a free paper, because they're not getting paid. It's just the journal who's like making the money is getting paid, not the author. So the author will be like, here's my paper, please learn about it. But no, there's not. There's actually a website called Archive, like it's spelled like Arxiv, like ARXIV, and there's a lot of preprints on there before they're published other places. They'll be posted on that Archive preprint server. And even if they're published in like astronomy or nature astronomy or the Journal of Astrophysics, but whatever, you can still usually find them just for free on that Archive preprint server, which is incredible.
The links are in the chat. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, so maybe we're fortunate.
It's getting brutal, better, though. I find in our field. It is getting better. The I feel like it is the same exact thing, is that like you can absolutely find the author and probably email and get it for free. Like that is probably a thing that you can absolutely do with a lot of archaeologists and historians who are publishing papers. Honestly, a lot of them put them on their academia or their ResearchGate. Like a lot of times you can find them there for free. And I've been very happy with a lot of my Egypt news. There's a website called Live Science, and I've not always been happy with like their articles that they write, but what I have found is that they essentially, anytime they seem to find a free article, like a free open access article, they write a shorter like summary article about it, and that's how I've been getting my news, and they link it to that actual like scholarly article. And sometimes I'm not so happy. It does, in some ways it does help summarize a lot of the stuff, so I don't have to read like the full paper before, because I really unfortunately don't have the time sometimes to be able to like read the full article. But I have found like paywall stuff has been sometimes difficult, especially honestly for the most famous journals in Egyptology, especially Journal of Egyptian Archaeology and the American Research Center in Egypt, which are two probably like the biggest journals for Egyptology. Those are both like, you can get some of the old stuff, but a lot of those are behind paywalls. There are some access. I also, in grad school, somebody gave me a really weird Russian website that has a lot of really old books, and Internet Archive has been a godsend for a lot of the really old archaeology reports, which you do, even though they are very inaccurate in a lot of ways, you do have to reference them a lot as well. But yeah, it's something that, it's a very good question, Vev, of like, there are ways around it, and a lot of the times it is really emailing the scholar and seeing if they have anything, or going to their academia or their research gate. I find, though, unfortunately, the bigger things like the full archaeological report, those are books. Those are not in articles, and so those are harder to come by because they publish them, and they're a lot of money, and they're really big, so they're not like just a little journal article or anything. They're harder to find, although sometimes with what's it called? What is that called? Interlibrary loan. When I was in grad school, interlibrary loan was able to get me a lot of current stuff, which was really nice, but it's not always as easy. Feel free anyone to use the lecture questions channel point. I'm trying to think of what other questions I had. I had only one pre-question from my Discord, which we'll get to in a second. But, and this is, I guess, we sort of touched on this, but like, has the we'll say, it's kind of weird to separate this and such, but like, has the I'm trying to think of how to word this. The astronomers, the astrobiologists who don't do as much science communication, how accepting have you kind of seen the field in general, but then also those people who really like, because I'm not gonna diss all scientists, but there are definitely some scientists who are not good communicators to the public or even to students or anything like that. But like, how have you seen like the science communication affecting your field, being accepted by your field over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have found in my personal experience, like there's a lot of, there's been some people who are not astrobiologists or in astronomy at all who have been like, you're doing science communication, which is like, what?
That's annoying.
And especially, you know, because like I understand like my degree is not in it. I don't have a PhD in astrobiology. There's actually not many schools in the US that you can get a degree in astrobiology in. I think there's a few more now, but when I was looking at it, there wasn't. My stepping stone was going to be astrophysics into it. But there's been some people who are like, how dare you? But I have found every astrobiologist that I've talked to has been nothing but supportive and so happy that I'm doing it. And that is like such a nice compliment. I don't know how it is for other fields of science, but in astrobiology, and I've read someone else's experience about it, how it's such an accepting field where because they need people from so many different backgrounds, not just like where you live and who you are, but like your scientific background. Are you a biologist? Are you a geologist? Like, are you looking at extremophiles in this specific environment? Like, we need so many people around the world doing different things with different backgrounds going into it. So it's like, no matter who you are, I think astrobiology will accept you like enthusiastically, because all of us are so just wanting to know, are we alone in the universe? Can we find life out there? Where is it going to be? What is it going to be like? And the more the merrier. The more people joining us trying to answer these questions, the more research is going on, you know, the more outreach that is done. I feel like it's a really kind and accepting group. And that said, you can't generalize. Maybe there's some people who are meanie pants or something. I don't know. I haven't come across any of them. I think I think it seems really accepting and just really exciting overall, which has been great. I think sometimes I kind of have to check my own like imposter syndrome with it, because I have had legitimate astrobiologists and science communicators like talk to me on like an equal level of like peer-to-peer, like, and really respect what I do, and that is like what but I've gotten a bit better with my confidence and my and that
we're
stuff.
in the same
but
boat
it's
over here.
I know the denial in your name.
As I've explained, if anyone does not know, the reason MelissainDeNile is MelissainDeNile is that it is based purely on the imposter syndrome that I garnered during grad school, and I hope to be as confident as you one day, because I still like I don't know how much like a lot of my coworkers and like my bosses know about everything that I do here, and they are very accepting of it. But it makes sense because they're an education team on a public like multi museum like field or whatever. But I am all like in a bundle when I think about my professors in grad school who, in a lot of ways, unfortunately, traumatized me in a lot, and telling them what I do now. I told everyone I went to vacation to San Francisco last week, and the reason I was originally going to go to San Francisco was going to be this weekend for a really big conference. And it's all about Egyptology, and I really wanted to go because I wanted to feel like I'm still in that field. I was telling my coworkers, I feel like I'm in this triple Venn diagram of Egyptology, archaeology, and museum studies. And especially, and also maybe a fourth one of like early American history, which is what all the museums focus on. And I'm just there in the tiny, tiny center, and I feel like I'm only getting surface level of all of these different fields that I'm kind of like working on. And if I went to this conference, like I feel like I would be very confident, and I think I would be able to like give out my business card and talk to people and stuff. And then if I saw my professor, especially the head of my thesis committee, I would run away. I would not want to talk to him, because in my mind, and I honestly do think this actually would happen, which sounds horrible for me to like put this on him. I think he would absolutely look down on me for what I do here, because I
understand.
He was on the he worked his way from like, he was a very like a poor kid originally, and worked his way up to go to an Ivy League to get this, and he's an expert in the specific language field in Egyptology, and like he sees the standard as getting your PhD. I'm never getting a PhD. Like, I have very much accepted this. I was like, there is no way in hell I am spending another 6 years doing this when I feel like I'm continuing to do this. And so it's very hard, because, and again, we talked about this with like, archaeologists have stepped into this like public archaeology role, but there are so many people that are not comfortable to talk to other people, to talk to the public about archaeology. And so public archaeology has been semi-accepted kind of into the archaeological world, and it definitely, I do think it actually depends on what time period of archaeology you're talking about, because I feel like it has, public archaeology is very popular in the Egyptology world, because it's all about communicate. Like you have to go and explain all of the different things that you are finding in history, and you are this kind of history / archaeology communicator. But in other cultures that you're doing archaeology, sometimes it's just not needed, because again, you're in the middle of a field. Not a single person from the public is going to show up to your site for somebody to explain it to you, or you're in a construction site and you might have to write a paper to explain it to the construction company, but that's it. So it's very like, it's almost a not necessary thing, like it's in a lot of archaeology, because a lot of it is commercial archaeology to because people are building a building. But in these spaces that do have archaeology in historic houses and in museums, you do need those people as well. Honest Johnny Romance, I love that question. What is our advice for young girls to get into fields like ours? I love that question. Just do it. Just do what you love. And I will say, at least on my end, archaeology is a woman field. It's coming. Women are, for a very, very long time, it was really only a men's field. But there are so many amazing female Egyptologists, archaeologists now. There are so many out there, and almost in every one of my classes, I barely took any classes with guys, quite literally. And there's so many opportunities within it, and yeah, do what you love. But it is a girls supporting girls in archaeology over here.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I didn't know that, and that's fantastic to hear. That's really rad. My answer to the question, I think, is pretty much the same. Like, follow your dreams, do what you love. Your gender identity has nothing to do with what you are able to accomplish and do in life. Neither does your skin color or anything like that. What matters is what is on the inside and your motivation and your drive. And if you're willing to work hard for it, and if you can have the discipline to, work really hard in school and in college, if you're going for a degree, if you need that for the field that you want to go into. I would say also, like, speaking from personal experience, not letting other people get you down or talk you down on it. And I think, it sounds honest, Johnny, it sounds like you're putting your daughter on the right track for, like, reaching out to us and talking to people of, like, how can I help support her? Like, that's incredible. That is such a good thing for a parent to do. And it's, like, really heartwarming to see people doing that. I think just as long as she knows she has the support and people are encouraging her and saying, like, you can do whatever you want to do, you've got this. I think that's really awesome. I think as far as space stuff goes,
there's amazing role models and famous ones and female role models, and so both of these fields, but in a lot of fields that are, I hate to say people are rediscovering, but they are.
No, I get that. I think there's a lot of things, if someone wants to get into, like, space and stuff, that they can do. Like, there's different, is it apprenticeship programs? There's programs for, like, students in high school to be able to work with NASA. There's different internships and stuff. I think trying out a lot of things, when you're younger, and seeing kind of what sticks with you and what you want to do and what is, like, really interesting to you and is, like, lighting that fire inside of you, and follow that and keep going for it. And then you can find internships and find things. And, knowing that failures are going to happen, and you're not always going to get the first internship you apply for or something, but that doesn't mean to stop trying, and it doesn't devalue your own worth as well. And I think just supporting the interests, buying books, doing whatever,
and
helps
reach out. We had a student, I think she was 13 years old. It was a 13-year-old. She wrote us a handwritten letter and sent it to the Archaeology Museum. And we ended up sending her some, like, merch that we had, and I wrote her a letter back, and she's become a little pen pal of mine, that I've sent a couple letters. I know, she's so cute.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
She lives on the West Coast, and I'm like, I need you to come visit the museum, because she just, like, asked me all these questions about archaeology and history and stuff. And so reach out, because there are always people who are willing to talk. You might have to, I felt bad. I think she had sent letters to a lot of different places, and we were one of the only ones that replied, but, like, there are people out there that will always talk. And it's just depending on, like,
life doing that.
I know. And I imagine myself as a kid, like, I I would have loved that. I would have absolutely adored doing that. And always look for like public events, because there are a lot, especially in the archaeology and history field, there are a lot of public events, depending on like where you're located, and you can always talk to the people there. And so there's lots of opportunities for even when you're really, really young. My organization, we have a kids summer camp, and it's a rarity because we want to be able to teach them good archaeology and stuff, but they excavate a real site with us for a week. And so like there are opportunities like that if you are really, really young and you want to get into the field. And the earlier you figure out what you want to do, it's not always the easier, but my God, my life was such a twisty path. It would have been so much easier if I figured out what I wanted to do a little bit earlier than I actually did. I'll briefly just answer.
I get that.
Yeah, man, it's just, if only my 13-year-old self knew that Egyptology was an actual opportunity, and I didn't just totally curve to the joke that I tell people is that I went to college. I wanted to go to college for creative writing to write books, and archaeology was going to be my backup job, which, if people know how much archaeologists get paid, that is the biggest joke that I don't even know how my parents agreed and supported me to do that, because it's crazy. 1237. Unfortunately, you missed this entire part of this lecture where I talked about all of the things that the Egyptians saw space, but I will do the quickest summary whatsoever. I don't think they knew about planets. I actually forgot to mention that earlier. I don't think they knew what the difference between a planet and the stars, because they didn't have telescopes or anything. No, you're totally fine. They did think that the sky was a giant woman covered in stars, and then a lot of the actual astronomy that they do doesn't come around until the Greco-Roman period. And then the other thing, which was Muhudel's like big question that she asked me, was, do the pyramids of Giza actually line up with the stars of Orion? And no, it's a giant fringe theory that actually stems from the thought that the pyramids are 10,000 years older than, or that they are 10,000 years old, and it actually was perpetuated by Graham Hancock before I think anyone knew Graham Hancock existed, because this is in the late 80s and 90s. But if you want to learn more about that, it's called the Orion Corelation Theory, and there's a relatively good Wikipedia article with some citations at the bottom about it that you can read a little bit more. But does anyone have any other questions? You can do it in the lecture question channel point, or throw those out there for either myself or Muhudels, because we've kind of covered most everything, minus a very silly question from Real Man Gerbeard, who I do not know if is still here. I think he's still on vacation, but he put this in the Discord of what would be a better cheesy action movie? Sharks from Earth getting loose in a space station and floating around in spheres of water, or sharks from another planet getting loose in the Earth's ocean. So alien sharks.
I love this. I want to see them both.
I want to see both.
I think sharks on a space station in bubbles of water sounds way more entertaining.
Yes.
Because like it's just, it gets like the sci-fi, like, oh, and like I don't know if y'all have seen the video or have seen videos on the International Space Station, but in like 2014, astronauts up there had a bubble of water, and they were like messing around with it, and it's so cool and so surreal. So it could be like a very like good science movie, as well, as weird as that sounds. But
yes. I agree.
They put like an Alka-Seltzer in there and just saw it bubble on the inside, and it like wraps around their hands, and they like can't get their hand out of the water. It's like, it's so weird. So I think playing on that kind of stuff of like low gravity, no gravity, sharks and bubbles of water, like just I think it would be incredible.
I think that's honest. That is absolutely better, because there is that weird movie. I do not know the name of it. Anyone might know what this is. It's not Sharknado, but it's in the same aspect of Sharknado. There was a movie where megalithic sharks like came alive and attacked like Los Angeles in a I don't know. All I know is I accidentally stumbled upon it, probably on the Sci-Fi Channel, and they were like prehistoric sharks. Is it the Meg? It might be the Meg. I don't know.
I haven't seen it.
All
So I
I
don't know.
know, there was a great part of that movie where they were all like along a dock, and some girl like decided to go swim out, and then the shark starts coming, and the guy's screaming. He's like, "Come back, come back, come back!" And she swims back, and then she gets eaten by a shark, and so he's crying and he's really sad, and all their friends come out, and oh my god, TikTok. All their friends come out, and they're like, "Come on, buddy, we gotta get inside." And he goes, just give me a moment. I just like want to like mourn her for a second. And all the friends turn around, and then suddenly the shark jumps out of the water, grabs him by the waist, and takes him down. And the friends all turn around, and he's just gone. And it's just like completely, I don't know what it was. It probably was that movie. But I think Sharks in Space would be even better.
That sounds great.
I
know Tommy Wiseau came out with the Big Shark movie, and I really want to watch it, and I haven't seen it yet.
Oh my god.
I don't know if it's that, but I think that's one where there's like a big shark let loose in like LA or something, but I don't know if it's that. But
yeah, I don't know if it was a megalodon versus something else. It was again just something. It was around the time of Sharknado, though. It was just one of the. I just remember I also remember there was a group that was, because there was a tsunami, so the water got pushed in like really far into LA, and there was a group stuck in a lifeguard tower, and they were getting attacked by megalodons and stuff. So, but yeah, it was. I hate those types of movies because I am kind of scared of sharks. I think I'm more scared of like me getting eaten by a shark. I think that's like, it's not that I'm necessarily scared of the shark. I'm just kind of scared of getting eaten by a shark. I'm also kind of scared of deep water. It's so weird because I do love the ocean.
Deep water is terrifying.
It's like I love the ocean, but as soon as I get to a point where my feet aren't touching the ground, and then I suddenly just get a thought, like it just passes through my mind. I'm just like, I have no idea what's underneath me, and I can just panic like very quickly if I'm just not thinking. And so I think it's the fear of the unknown, and that a shark or any other thing could be in there. I think sharks unfortunately just get looped into anything. Yeah.
I hate that also. Yeah. I get really nervous. I've only been surfing like a few times, but I get really nervous when I go surfing because I know I look like a shark's favorite food. I know I look like a sea lion, and I'm like, I don't like this. I'm in their territory. But thankfully sharks don't attack people very often, and fatal attacks are also really rare. Humans definitely kill a lot more sharks. A lot. Like 11,000 per hour, over 100 million a year or something. Like it's
insane. Yeah,
crazy numbers. Yeah, thankfully sharks don't like the taste of humans, and they're not vicious man-eating creatures like Jaws made them.
I did watch Jaws finally, and that movie is very scary, even though the shark is so fake. It is the music.
Oh,
I was so scared. I was like, oh my god. I assumed like, I'm very good at separating things. Like if I see something, I'm like, that's just fake. And like the thought of the shark looks so fake, but man, that music was like, oh, it's like trained in my brain to like scare you in a kind of thing.
Oh gosh, they did
I
a
told
good
a
job
random thing. A random thing that I told everyone in chat when I got back. I actually saw, when I was out in California, I saw a baby elephant seal get rescued, and it was the best day of my life because baby elephant seals are my absolute favorite animal, and I saw it get rescued, and I was very happy it didn't get eaten by anything. Thank you so much, Roxy. I'm so glad. Yay! Any last questions from anyone?
Yeah, I was looking in the chat. I'm not seeing any, but feel free to ask any questions.
Feel free to ask any questions. We'll wrap up in just a little bit. Oh, FICO. For Moohoodles, what is an aspect of archaeology that you love the most? And I'll say something about astronomy that I love the most.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think being able to learn about past cultures is so exciting. I know Melissa earlier was talking about like, oh, it's just a spoon. Like maybe I am putting it on a pedestal, but like the fact that we can see a spoon, like a spoon or a pot or like shoes exist from 5,000 years ago. Like, what? I want to know the person who wore the shoes. Like, how is that? Did they make the shoes? Were they a gift? Like,
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't matter, right? But it's just like, it's little stories that I want to hear. Like, how is their life, and what was their day-to-day like? I just think it's so cool learning about people from back then. And obviously, you know, maybe that's not like in my ancestry lineage, but it's like the ancestry of humans in and of themselves. Well, I could really go on a rant here, and I won't, about how we're all made of star stuff and how, you know, we're all stuff from the universe. But I really do love just learning about the past, and seeing things, and seeing how life was then, and you know, being grateful, I guess, for where we're at now. Also, not that anything back then was anything lesser than, but I love being able to, like, you know, have the internet and talk to you, and have my computer, and no other galaxies exist, and all of this stuff. And you know, it makes me think of like, what will it be like in the future, and what things will people find in the future at our archaeological sites or whatever.
One of the other museums I work at is an apothecary, so a historic pharmacy, and people always come in and they're like, I'm so glad I live in my time, like, that I didn't get medicine. So cool. It's very cool. And they're like, I'm so glad that I like didn't live in this world where medicine was bad. And I was like, I do agree with you, but if I really think about it, if I lived in a world where I didn't have the internet, I would be so bored. I know technically my brain would be trained to like do other things and have other hobbies, but I would be really bored. And I think about that sometimes more, where I'm just like, what would I do all the time? Would it just be relaxing? Because I'm just like a type A person. I just always have to be doing something, and a lot of it involves the internet, unfortunately, and it's kind of out there. My favorite part of astronomy, and this is very hard, but I love just the thought that the world is so much bigger than it actually is. Like, it just goes on, and just thinking about all of the possibilities of what could be out there is just like, it's kind of a crazy black hole, pun intended, of like, just like, you could just go on forever. But it's the same thing, like, your favorite, that is the exact same favorite part about archaeology for me, is that looking at an object and thinking about all of the possible questions you can ask. And so in this case, in astronomy, it's like, I'm looking for those same questions. I'm seeking those, like, there's just so much out there. And it makes me sad sometimes that it's like, well, actually, this is a double thing that makes me sad, both about archaeology and astronomy, is that we'll never know everything. And I don't like that. I want to know everything. I don't like that we will never know everything, or in the same aspect that, like, when it comes to archaeology, we'll never be able to confirm 100% anything. And that is the thing that I kind of hate. And astronomy, I think you get a little bit closer to that, but it's like, that we can't know everything, it just annoys me.
No, we'll never be able to know everything, like, ever. Not just because there's so much out there, but there's some stuff we, like, literally will never just be able to get answers to.
And it's just so annoying.
And it's hard, but I think that continuous, like, there's always more to discover, there's more to find out, is just so exciting.
Yeah.
And I love the kind of overlap of our fields too, of you know, not just like, there's no ancient alien things, but just kind of learning about stuff, and in a way we're both learning about the past, and trying to make sense of all of that, which I think is exciting.
I'm realizing, I mean,
obviously there's other stuff in space, but things are far away, so we're seeing it as it was in the past.
But I'm realizing our fields are much more close than I thought they were. Like, it's kind of a funny thing when we did the guest lecture with paleontologizing. I always assumed that paleontology and archaeology are really similar, and then I found out that they're not. And now with this one, I'm finding that we are much more similar. Literally on stream, I found out that paleontologists don't dig in dirt, that they dig in rock, and I was like, what do you mean? And it just was something that just like never computed in my head. Wait. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, we don't use trowels, we use pickaxes. I was like, what? what do you mean? And it just like, again, like,
what are you doing?
Didn't make any sense in my mind. I saw briefly somebody asked, also, Karnaki, all this entire guest lecture will go up on my YouTube, just the VOD, so that it can be watched for forever in time, so people can watch it. And then I think somebody asked me what my first dig was. Yeah, what was my first dig? Moxie Drinker asked. I have been on 8 digs, I think. Ironically, I've only gotten paid to do 1. All of the others were volunteer, or I paid to do it because of field school and stuff. But my first dig was it's very weird how my life has just gone in a big circle. My first dig was volunteering for what is now my current job. And I was a volunteer for 2 different things, and then I was an intern during grad school, and then I was a part-time employee, and now I'm a full-time employee. And my life has just gone in a circle. And so it was a very small excavation at the site, actually, that we do the kids' archaeology camp. It's a former plantation site, but it's a just giant hill now. And we've been searching for the house for over 20 years. Actually, 30 years. It's as old as me. We've been searching for the house for 30 years and still have not found it. But I've done digs in Rome and or outside of Rome in southern England, America, and St. Croix. So lots of different places.
So interesting.
I know. I miss digging. I'm very excited because the only dig that I do now is the kids' archaeology camp, and it's nice because it's exactly what I wanted to do in archaeology, which is tell people when to dig. And essentially, I don't have to do a lot of the digging. I just have to tell the kids keep digging, and they do it all for me. So
Nice.
any books we recommend on astronomy in ancient Egypt? I don't have any.
I don't know.
I might be able to Google some right now, but I'd have to look it up. But Amber, just send me a message and I'll look up some. I feel like there definitely are some. It's just not. Unfortunately, I would probably recommend looking for more Greco-Roman astronomy stuff, because there's not a lot about astronomy in Egypt before the Greco-Roman period. So you might have to technically look at a Roman book on astronomy, which will include the discoveries that they had in Alexandria in Egypt, which then are semi-Egyptian and such.
Sounds so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Definitely check out if you're interested in astronomy, which I actually want her to come back on. I think she's gonna give another lecture. The guest lecture I did with Alexandria about Alexandria, Egypt, and the astronomers and scientists there. It's on my YouTube, and she talks about astrolabes and lots of really cool mathematics and stuff. And that's on my YouTube. We also go around and we run around Assassin's Creed Origins in the lecture. So we go look at all the library and all the stuff they have in there. But yeah, does anyone else have any other questions? That was everything we were going to cover.
Yeah, this was so much fun and so insightful too. I mean, I think we kind of answered the no aliens thing.
I think we did.
We don't really have any evidence for aliens or anything. I talk about this all the time on my stream, but usually we keep it more for that. But yeah. The universe is big. I think statistically there's probably some life out there, but it's too far and we'll probably never meet it or never really know. Yeah. But we're looking at exoplanets near us and near us.
Yeah, near us is
looking
huge
at stuff in our
quotation
solar
marks.
system for bacterial life and things as well. So it's exciting. But
It is.
yeah, I guess that's kind of my
Yeah,
wrap
it's
up or
like
whatever. I don't know.
they didn't go to ancient Egypt. There would be so many better images. They like the Egyptians loved drawing and they loved depicting everything that they saw. You would think that there would be actual aliens. And also, don't come at me and say that the people from Amarna are aliens just because they got long heads. That's not that's thousands that's also like 1,000 years after the pyramids, so doesn't make
I mean, I think
any sense.
yeah, they would have built like some statues and made a whole lot more art, because that would have
Absolutely.
been like a god visiting them essentially,
God,
right? It would have been like, oh,
absolutely.
okay, move over, Ra. We got another person
mean,
here. Like,
to be honest, it's literally as I kind of said before, like aliens don't look like the little green man. Like, could a stupid person interpret that anytime a god is pictured, they are an alien because they look just like them? Like, I don't, like, it's stupid. Like, we're never gonna know. It just is silly. Yeah, they would have been drawing and writing like crazy because they love doing that.
there'd be a whole lot more evidence, and by that I mean at least evidence in and of itself.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, that said, it would be great if, but I think I'm sure we all want aliens to exist or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we need extraordinary evidence for that, and we're just not there yet. But in good news for it, astrobiologists are working every day trying to find things and check it out. It seems like we're close, maybe at least for like microbial life or something. It feels like any day there's going to be something. So yeah.
Yeah, and archaeologists are always looking at more. Just focus on the people and not the aliens that totally didn't bring anything to help them.
Yeah.
It always annoys me.
Exactly.
The damn battery theory. I'm like, what is it powering? The only purpose of a battery is to power something. Why would a pyramid be a battery if it's powering nothing? That was my rant.
Yeah.
That theory just makes me
fair,
so
that's fair.
Stuff. Thank you, Claire. Stuff. Exactly.
That's fair.
Well, thank you guys so much. I'll hang around for a little bit longer. But please, everyone over on my channel, please go and shout out Moohoodles and such. We're not going to talk about the Antikythera. The Antikythera is like so much later than the pyramids, and it's so small, and it's not even finished. And we're talking Indiana Jones 5 right now. But yeah, give a follow to Moohoodles. This will eventually get up on my YouTube. There is no promises that it will be anytime soon. I'm trying to get fast at it, but long form editing is not my gift. And so
Get that.
but the cool part is that Moohoodles is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday streamer, and I am usually a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, maybe Sunday streamer. So you can hit us both up every single day of the week.
Woo!
So we will say a good night to Moohoodles, and I'll stay on for a little bit longer because I don't have to go to work until like 1 o'clock tomorrow. So but have
I'll
a very
rage
great
in
night.
a little bit.
Thank you so much, Moohoodles, and thank you just so much for chatting and having such a great time and bringing all your lovely followers over here.
This was so much fun. Thank you for asking me and having me on here and nerding out with me and educating me about all of this stuff too. It's been so cool, so insightful, so much fun, and you are absolutely incredible. So thank you.
And I hope we can meet up at TwitchCon.
Yes, I would love that. Oh my gosh, I would so love it.
I'm prepping for it. I'm prepping. I gotta do some research and figure it all out. But yes, thank you guys so much.
That sounds great.
Have a great rest of your night. Bye.
Thank you. You too.